Chapter 1609. My life is over. After Yang Yang shouted, he closed his eyes. At this moment, he could even feel the piercing pain of the sword wind slicing through his throat. Dang! A crisp sound rang out. It was the sound of weapons clashing against each other. Then there was a gust of cold wind, followed by the sound of more weapons clashing. After waiting for a moment, Yang Yang found that he was not dead. He opened his eyes and saw Yang Lu blocking in front of him. At this moment, there was a scratch on Yang Lu's right arm, and blood was flowing out from it. Needless to say, at the critical moment, Yang Lu must have rushed out to help him avoid the fatal blow. But because of this, Yang Lu was also injured. Who is Yang Lu? He is one of the 5 servants of the Bugnam of Gojoseon, Yang Qindong, and his skills were quite good. But later, because of some mistakes, he was sent to the southern Ming kingdom by Yang Qindong and was responsible for managing the intelligence here. In the eyes of many people, he was already a marginalized person. Because of this, he used to drink to drown his sorrows for a period of time, and his physical condition was far worse than before. Because of this, the moment Yang Lu fought, he was injured. How is it? Luzi, are you okay? Yang Yang hurriedly came forward and asked with a trace of concern. Fourth Master, this little one is fine. Yang Lu smiled at Yang Yang, and then his face flashed with a ruthless expression. He said to the butler Yang Ying and the others who followed him, all of you go together and kill these assassins. Right, try to leave them alive. After Yang Lu shouted angrily, he turned around and knelt down in front of Yang Yang. Fourth Master, this little one just received the news and rushed over. I have frightened you. It's okay, you came at the right time. Yang Yang also sighed in fear. Fortunately, Yang Lu came in time. It seems that Yang Xie's intelligence network is indeed very powerful. He can even get information about an assassination attempt. Yang Lu came with dozens of experts from the Intelligence Department's Action Department. Most importantly, these operatives were all holding pistols in their hands, which was very impressive. No matter how powerful you are, can you win against a gun? Wouldn't it be 1 in 1,000 to be selected to join the Operations Division of the Intelligence Department? 1 in 100, 1 in a dozen, 1 in a dozen, 1 in a flower, 1 in a flower. Naturally, their marksmanship wasn't as bad as Yang Yang's. When they fired their pistols, 4 of the 5 Jonins were killed on the spot. The other one was only shot in the body because they wanted to keep him alive, but his vital parts were fine. Capture him alive and ask him who ordered them to do this. Seeing that the situation was settled, Yang Lu heaved a sigh of relief and shouted loudly, Don't come over. The last remaining Jonin waved the ninja sword in his hand and placed it on his neck, threatening to kill himself if anyone came over. This action really made the members of the Operations Department stand rooted to the ground, not knowing what to do. Haha, you can save him once, but can you save him 10 times or even 100 times? Let me tell you, since we have set him as our target, we will definitely kill him. Today, we were just careless. It won't be long before you die. I will wait for you on the ground, ha ha ha. After a burst of laughter and clamor, the sharp ninja sword in the Jonin's hand instantly cut his throat, and with a spurt of blood, he fell to the ground with a plop. When the members of the Operations Department walked forward, they found that the Jonin was no longer breathing. 5 assassins died just like that, without a single survivor. All of this was seen by Yang Yang's eyes. He should be happy, but he didn't know why at this moment he didn't feel happy at all. Only the words that some people said before they died flashed in his mind. You can save him once, but can you save him 10 times or even 100 times? Yang Yang couldn't understand who hated him to the bone and wanted to kill him. But he knew that this place was no longer safe. In other words, the entire Nanjing prefecture was no longer safe. Before killing the person behind the scenes, he must leave here and find an absolutely safe place. Then where would it be safer? Without much thought, the name of Resin City appeared in his mind. Yang Yang suddenly grabbed Yang Lu's arm and said, Luzi, immediately arrange something. I want to leave here. I want to go back to Resin City. Oh, right. You have to personally bring people to escort me. This is no problem. But shouldn't we report it to the young master? Yang Lu revealed a difficult expression. No need. I'm his fourth brother. When we reach Resin City, I will tell him. Yang shook his head. He didn't want to stay here for a moment longer. He just wanted to hurry back to Resin City. Otherwise, he wouldn't even dare to close his eyes and sleep. All right, Yang Lu could only say reluctantly. After all, Yang was the young master's fourth brother, and was also one of his own masters. As a servant, he could only obey unconditionally. Yang left, and Yang Lu brought over 100 members of the intelligence department to protect him. They went straight to Fujian. There was a ship specially sent to Resin City. It was also the nearest way home. Although he had left, what he left behind for the Southern Ming dynasty was a mess. There was no need to talk about Yang Lu's identity. Luckily, he didn't suffer any injuries. Otherwise, he really didn't know how to explain it to Bugnam of Gojoseon. The current situation was already a little tense, and the development of the situation had greatly exceeded the expectations of the Southern Ming. If a war really broke out now, how could the Southern Ming that wasn't fully prepared be their opponent? Perhaps a war would break out one day, but it definitely wasn't now. Hence, Yang Lu's problem at this time was indeed a headache. From the report of the genie guards, the 5 assassins were all dead, no one was alive. The Southern Ming imperial court was even more depressed. It would be better if they caught the real culprit. It would be best if they could interrogate the mastermind. That way, the Southern Ming would be able to remove themselves from this problem. However, the problem now was that the assassins were all dead, and the identity of the culprit had become a mystery. If this pot of shit wasn't handled properly, the Southern Ming Imperial Court would have to bear the responsibility. Investigate carefully and find out who did it. The Southern Ming Imperial Court isn't afraid of trouble, but we definitely won't be casually used by others. Ingzong Zhu Qijin gave the order, and the genie guards in the city immediately moved. However, facing an extremely well-organized assassin organization, how could it be so easy to find the mastermind? In the end, after investigating, they still couldn't find any clues. Yang Qindong also received a telegram from the Security Bureau 4 hours after the incident. Someone wants to harm fourth brother? Yang Qindong suddenly stood up, his entire face terrifyingly cold. Dragons had reverse scales, and one of Yang Qindong's reverse scales was his family and loved ones. Investigate the ins and outs of this matter clearly. I want to know all the details of this matter. Yang Qindong was angry. The pitiful one was the head of the Security Bureau, Yang San. After he received the order, he immediately decided to set off for the Nanjing Imperial Court. However, before he left, he reported a clue that he had just found to Yang Qindong. Young Master, we have a new clue about the transmitter of 9826, Nanning Imperial Court. Bai Kuan stood on top of the city gate tower, wearing a suit of armor. In the past 2 days, after countless psychological struggles, he finally made a decision before he received the Southern Ming Imperial Court's decree. That was to fight against the 5-star army. There was a high possibility that he would lose this battle, but he still had to do it. Since he had already surrendered to the Southern Ming Imperial Court, he could only walk this path to the end. He had once surrendered to the Southern Ming Imperial Court from the 3 provinces army. If he surrendered to the 5-star army from the Southern Ming Imperial Court, wouldn't he be like Lu Bu, a slave of 3 surnames? Think about it. Lu Bu was the #1 general during the 3 Kingdoms era. But what good end did he have at that time? And what good reputation did he have today? No. Just the sign of a slave of 3 surnames nailed him to the pillar of shame, never to rise again. With such a living example in front of him, Bai Kuan didn't want to be such a person. Of course, the most important thing that prompted him to make such a decision was that the day after he surrendered to the Southern Ming Imperial Court and met Zhou Xiang, his family was forced to be sent to the capital of the Southern Ming Imperial Court. Gloriously, it was to protect his family and let them go to the capital to enjoy life. However, no one could see that this was simply treating his family as hostages. For the safety of his family, Bai Kuan could only do this. After making the decision, all the soldiers in the Nanning imperial court were gathered by him. In order to increase the chances of defending the city, he even ordered people to gather all the men, women, and children in the city. He was already prepared to perish together. This time, even if he lost, he wanted to label the 5-star army as immoral. As for himself, as long as his family was safe, he didn't care if he died. It had to be said that Bai Kuan's decision was very bold, especially the action of gathering all the men, women, and children in the city onto the city gate tower. It could be said to be a combination of despicable and shameless. This was because the moment the 5-star army attacked the other cities, using the cannons, it was inevitable that ordinary civilians would be blasted to death. Didn't Bugnam of Gojoseon say that he wanted to lead all the Han people to the peak of the world and let them live a good life? All right, I'll place the people on the city gate tower and see if you dare to fire. If you do, you'll be slapping your own face. At that time, who will believe you? Yi Zichen thought. All right. Amidst the weeping and crying, the city gate tower was filled with mournful wails. The civilians didn't know what kind of impact they would have on the city gate tower. They only knew that now that they were pushed to the front lines, they would become cannon fodder if they didn't do well. Because of this, they all cursed Bai Kuan's 8 generations of ancestors in their hearts. Chapter 1610. However, this kind of greeting was obviously useless. How could a person who wasn't even afraid of death be afraid of being cursed by others? Finally, while Bai Kuan was waiting, the 5-star army began to appear below the city wall. They're finally here. Let's see what you're going to do. Bai Kuan was wearing a full body armor. After looking from afar, he hid behind the civilians. He decided not to show his face and not give the 5-star army a chance to question and scold him. Otherwise, if he was really questioned, it wouldn't look good for him. Are they preparing for a battle? Tian, who rode forward on his horse. When he took out his binoculars and looked, he couldn't help but curse when he put it down. This Bai Kuan is really a bastard. That's right, he is indeed a bastard. However, it will be difficult for us to do next. Division Commander Xiao Feng also put down his binoculars. His face was as black as the bottom of a pot. They couldn't be blamed for being so angry. Who would have thought that Bai Kuan would push the commoners onto the city gate tower? If that was the case, they would inevitably hit the commoners if they wanted to fire. If that was the case, just the words of the scholars and the mouths of the celestials would be enough to make it difficult for the commoners to defend themselves. What should we do? The two of them looked at each other at almost the same time. As the highest-ranking officers in this army, the two of them felt the pressure at this moment. It even made them feel a little breathless. Let's ask the 6th young master, Tian, who thought for a while and made a decision. Okay, but you have to report it secretly, Xiao Feng added after hearing that. Why did they have to send the message secretly? It was because they didn't want the 6th young master to be the scapegoat. As a subordinate, as a subject, they had to share the burden of their master. If they sent the message openly, where would they put Yang Qindong? Fight? If that was the case, the crime of indiscriminate killing of civilians would fall on Yang Qindong's head. The history books wouldn't record it well. Retreat without fighting? If that's the case, how are we going to solve the problem in Guangxi? However, if they were to fight without asking for permission, what if the 6th young master had a better idea or had other plans? Wouldn't that be tantamount to ruining the 6th young master's plans? They couldn't bear such a crime. Therefore, they had to send a telegram, but they had to send a secret telegram. This way, they could know Yang Qindong's thoughts and solve this problem. Even if the two of them had to take the blame in the end, as long as the 6th young master knew the whole story. Even if he punished them, it wouldn't be too heavy. The 5-star army began to set up their formation outside the city. The secret message was also sent out and sent to the head of the intelligence department, Wang Shan. Then it was quickly placed in front of Yang Qindong, who was still in the palace of the 3 provinces. Yang Qindong was shocked when he saw the telegram. He remembered that during the War of Resistance against Japan, there was a time when the Japanese took the civilians to attack the army of D, which gave the People's Army a headache. He didn't expect that such a scene would happen to him. Come, bring me Baikuin's information. Since it was something that might happen, Yang Qindong was naturally prepared for it. However, he still needed to understand more about the situation before that. After all, his approach could solve the problem once, but it didn't mean that it could be solved every time. Once the other party was on guard, it would be much more difficult to solve such a problem in the future. Wang Shan quickly sent the information about Baikuin to Yang Qindong. Okay, put the information here first. Call back to Tian Hu and Xiaofeng. Tell them to wait. Don't act rashly before there are new orders. When the telegram reached Nanning, Tian Hu and General Xiaofeng breathed a sigh of relief. Since the sixth young master had given instructions, they only needed to follow it. As for the problem in front of them, they would definitely get a perfect solution. In the eyes of the generals, since this was an order from Yang Qindong, the problem would definitely be solved. This was also the result of many years of trust. Baikuin, who was on the top floor of Nanning Prefecture, didn't know about this. He only saw the 5-star army stop at the bottom of the city and didn't dare to attack. He was immediately overjoyed. He thought that he had found a good way to curb the development of the 5-star army. For this reason, he had even specially written a memorial and had it sent to the capital at the fastest speed possible. Before his memorial could reach the capital, a tragedy happened in the capital. In the courtyard that the southern Ming dynasty had arranged for Baikuin's family, in just one night, people and animals were all killed. From the elderly to the children, even the dogs, chickens, and other animals they raised were all killed. No one survived. From the top to the bottom of the dozens of people, no one was able to breathe. The seriousness of the case and the cruelty of the methods. Even if the southern Ming dynasty wanted to hide it, they couldn't. In just one morning, the news had spread throughout the entire Yingtian Prefecture, Nanjing Prefecture. What was even worse was that the murderer had left words on the wall. The words were written in blood. The first bailiff to enter the courtyard could see it very clearly. It was very eye-catching. Clearly, this was Yang Qindong's method of revenge. Yang Qindong had never been a peaceful person, especially towards those who were his enemies. He would never be lenient. Otherwise, he wouldn't have gained so much territory and influence in such a short period of time. Baikuin wanted to use the common people to threaten him, so he could only use a thunderous method to get rid of his family. Although the process was somewhat cruel, in order to prevent this kind of thing from happening in the future, he could only be forced to do this. The facts also proved that this had indeed intimidated many people with bad intentions. They didn't care about their own life and death, because that was their mission. But for their entire family to be killed, it was obviously something they didn't want to see. It was enough to make them feel afraid. Yang Qindong used facts to tell everyone that on the battlefield, it didn't matter how the two sides fought. That was the fate of a soldier, and it was his duty. But if you wanted to play tricks behind his back, then you had to have enough courage to bear everything. If you didn't have such a mind and spirit, then it was best to play according to the rules of the game. Regarding these things, Baikuin was completely unaware because of the lack of communication. He was still proud of his method of forcing the common people to go upstairs and intimidating the 5-star army. On the evening of the third day, the 5-star army's camp outside the city welcomed Tai Hu and a group of Langia Special Forces members. Tai Hu and the others were prepared by Yang Qindong to help Tian Hu and Xiaofeng solve the problem. Captain Tai. Tian Hu and Xiaofeng both saluted and greeted. Tai Hu, who had the rank of Major General, also laughed and raised his arm to salute. The two of you have higher ranks than me. I should be the one saluting the two of you. In terms of military rank, both Tian Hu and Xiaofeng were lieutenant generals, and they both had 2 gold stars. But they knew that people like Tai Hu couldn't be judged by military rank. Everyone knew that although the Langia Special Forces had the least number of people, their combat power was very high. They specialized in completing difficult missions that a large army couldn't. Of course, the most important point was that the Langia Special Forces members weren't under the jurisdiction of the Five-Star Army's army. They were under their own rule and were only under the control of Yang Qindong. Even if the sixth young master wasn't around, they would only listen to the eldest prince, who was also Yang Xie's successor, Yang Bo's orders. Just based on this, they couldn't be compared to him. Both sides were familiar with each other. After all, they had trained together in the early days and had many years of camaraderie. Now that they were gathered together, they couldn't help but warm up. After connecting, Tai, who told Yang Qindong about some of the things that Yang Qindong had instructed him to do before he came here. Generals, the sixth young master wants you to assist us. There shouldn't be any problems, right? Since it was Yang Qindong's order, Tianhu and Xiaofeng naturally didn't have any objections. After nodding their heads, they said in unison, "We will obey the sixth young master's order. Captain Tai, please tell us what to do." "Okay, then I'll be overconfident." Taihu laughed, then walked to the sand table and began to arrange the combat mission. The morning of the fourth day, the weather was beautiful, and the wind was gentle and the sun was bright. The sun hung high in the sky, and there weren't even many white clouds. Bai Kuan slept until dawn. When he woke up in the morning, he looked up at the sky and couldn't help but sigh. Good weather. Then, with the help of his bodyguards, he put on his armor and went up the city gate tower. Before they could reach the top of the city wall, someone had already reported that the Five-Star Army had started to move. The Five-Star Army's field cannons had also started to advance. What? Do they really dare? Hearing this, Bai Kuan's face tensed up. He was most afraid that the Five-Star Army would disregard all criticism and launch a fierce attack. In this way, although the other side would also be criticized by the public, the first to die would be him. This was something he absolutely didn't want to see. He hurriedly went up the city gate tower and saw the cannons continuously moving forward. Not only that, the Five-Star Army also split up. A large number of cavalry moved towards the north and south gates. What are they doing? Bai Kuan was puzzled at first. After thinking it through, he couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. What? Do they want to play a trick of surprise? Then you are destined to miscalculate. On the other city gate towers, I have also arranged for many civilians. Unless you dare to risk universal condemnation, you can dream of attacking the city. The Five-Star Army's actions didn't make Bai Kuan feel afraid. He had a feeling that the other side was just bluffing. They wouldn't dare to casually attack civilians. Since that was the case, what was there for him to worry about? Bai Kuan's heart calmed down. However, what he didn't know was that in the sky above him, there was an air force flying over. Chapter 16:11. Strictly speaking, this was not a real air force. It was a mobile air force unit made up of powered umbrellas. They were different from the real air force. They didn't need to use hot air balloons to fly. They only needed one person with a single umbrella to fly, and then control the landing to any designated location. This Air Force unit was made up of the Wolfang Special Forces members. The so-called Strong Army mostly referred to the land tigers. After the Navy, there was the name of the Sea Dragon. After that, there was the Air Force, and then there was the name of the Sky Eagle. These were the three armies of the future. For a time, the three armies had their own things to do. Unless there was a difficult battle, they would join forces to fight and display more power. But there was an army that had the advantages of the three armies. They could fly, go into the sea, and even fight on land. They were the members of the Wolfang Special Forces. This time, using the powered umbrellas to fight in the air was Yang Qindong's method to break through the situation. When the order was given to Captain Tai Hu, he gladly accepted it. This kind of training was very mysterious in the eyes of other armies. But for the Wolfang Special Forces, it was a piece of cake. They didn't know how many times they had trained like this. They had already reached the realm of advancing and retreating freely. Today, it was time for them to test the results. After all, the training was for battle. Now, it was finally time to use it. Hundreds of powered umbrellas rose above Nanning Prefecture and then glided down towards the city. Every soldier had their own clear goal, and they were already familiar with it last night. Now, what they needed to do was to quickly enter the city and kill their way out. They needed to seize the East City Gate and create an excellent opportunity for the main force of the 5-Star Army to enter the city. As for whether the 300 members of the Wolf Fong Special Forces could complete this mission, there was no need to worry. Every one of them was equipped with a Type 95 submachine gun and was fully loaded with bullets. This was enough to ensure that they would be able to form the greatest combat power and achieve the military objective. Bai Kuan still didn't know about all this. His eyes were still on the 5-Star Army. He wanted to see what kind of tricks they were going to play so that he could react accordingly. On top of every city tower inside every city gate, he had arranged for a large number of civilians to gather here. As long as the 5-Star Army dared to open fire, they would definitely blow up innocent civilians. This way, they would have to take the blame. If they didn't want to take the blame, they couldn't use the cannons to bombard them, and they wouldn't be able to enter the city. As long as he couldn't enter the city, he had nothing to be afraid of. Previously, he had already transferred the entire Guangxi region's army into the Nan clan manor. There were over 30,000 soldiers in the city, which was more than enough to defend the 4 city walls and the city gates. As time passed, the Southern Ming Imperial Court would definitely send reinforcements when they saw that he was stuck here like a nail. At that time, the entire Nanning Prefecture would be saved. Bai Kuan even thought that at that time, he might be the true hero of the Southern Ming dynasty. In his heart, he was still dreaming about the beautiful future. He didn't know that nearly 300 people of the 5-Star Army had already passed over his head. Moreover, the power umbrella made a loud noise. This was because the 5-Star Army cavalry was moving on a large scale, so the sound was covered by the sound of the horses' hooves. This wasn't because Bai Kuan was careless, but because he didn't know what the 5-Star Army was capable of. In fact, it wasn't just him. Even Tianhu and Xiaofeng were considered the core members of the 5-Star Army. However, they didn't know what the power umbrella was and why it was so powerful. It was because of this that Yang Qindong was so mysterious. Because they didn't know what more powerful methods their master had yet to use, it made their hearts filled with awe and respect for the 6th young master even more. Using the cover, the Wolf Fong Special Forces successfully flew to the sky above Nanning Prefecture. Then they slowed down and began to move towards the East Gate. In comparison, the East Gate was the furthest away from the 5-Star Army's main force, and the defense was also the most lax. At least until now, they hadn't seen any sign of the 5-Star Army outside the East Gate. Without any opponents, their vigilance naturally decreased a lot. This also created better conditions and opportunities for the Wolf Fong Special Forces to attack. One after another, the power umbrellas flew over and arrived at the street closest to the East Gate. This was also thanks to Bai Kuan's cooperation. If he didn't bring all the people in the city to the city tower and the gate, the whereabouts of Tianhu and the others would definitely attract some people's attention. But now there was no one on the street, so they could hide their whereabouts quietly. Then they closed the umbrellas and gathered. They gathered the power umbrellas together and placed them in an empty courtyard. Then they started to check the equipment and personnel. There were a total of 288 people in this trip, except for one person who stepped on a roof when he landed and suffered a slight ankle injury. The rest of the people stood in front of them unharmed. Tian, who faced 287 people. His face was a little red, and he was very excited. He knew that after this battle, the name of the Wolf Fong Special Forces would be completely known. Leave 18 people behind to guard the equipment. The remaining 270 people will be divided into 9 teams. Each team has 30 people. Search in a fan shape and move towards the East Gate. Remember, Unless you encounter the enemy's main force, it's better not to fire if you don't have to. Do you understand? Tian Hu asked loudly. In the entire team, except for the 18 people who were about to be left behind, the rest of the 270 people answered in unison. If it weren't for the fact that they were in the enemy's heart and couldn't shout loudly, their shouts would have caused the earth to shake. In the following time, they formed the teams. Except for the injured person, 17 people were left behind unwillingly to guard the equipment. The other 9 teams were quickly organized and then followed their respective team leaders to search in the direction of the target. When the Wolf Fong Special Forces was established, one of the earliest tasks was to carry out the beheading operation. Therefore, their vigilance was extremely high. For example, how to camouflage and move forward in the enemy's rear was their specialty. 9 teams with a total of 270 people moved together. This could be said to be the biggest operation of the Wolf Fong Special Forces in the enemy's rear. Everyone knew the importance of this task, so they were very careful when they moved forward. No one wanted to drag the whole team down because of their own reasons. The result of their concerted efforts was that they were not discovered by anyone until they moved to the East Gate. Team 3 and Team 4 will take the initiative to attack. The other teams will protect them. If things go wrong, you can choose to shoot. When they moved to a place 1 mile away from the East Gate, Tian Hu made a gesture to stop the team and start to arrange the situation. 5 minutes later, Teams 3 and 4 with a total of 60 people became the first echelon. They walked out of the darkness and moved toward the East Gate, which was slightly empty. These 60 soldiers were all wearing the military uniform of the South Ming Army. This was one of the items they had obtained when they encountered the patrol team of the South Ming Army. Now was the time to borrow this flag. Outside the East Gate, the soldiers of the South Ming Army stood in a mess. Some of them had even leaned against the bricks below the city gate tower, closing their eyes to rest or taking a short nap. The soldiers would only open their eyes when the civilians under the city gate moved. Then they would reveal a ferocious look, warning and threatening the innocent civilians not to move. Otherwise, the consequences would be very serious. When Tai Hu and the others saw this through the binoculars, they gritted their teeth in hatred. Was this how the strong bullied the weak and the strong bullied the weak? Did they only know how to threaten the defenseless civilians? What kind of ability was this? Fortunately, Teams 3 and 4 attacked at this moment. It was time to save the civilians. They were all wearing the military uniform of the South Ming Army and looked like they had just returned from a patrol. Even if some of the South Ming Army saw them, they did not think much of it and continued to do what they were supposed to do. After all, they were on the same side and there was nothing to be suspicious about. For 100 meters, 300 meters, 150 meters, when they were finally 50 to 60 steps away, those with good eyesight could clearly see the faces of the other party. A Chiliarch of the South Ming Army had a puzzled expression on his face. He realized that he did not recognize a single one of the South Ming Army. He did not even recognize a single one of them. This unexpected situation attracted the attention of the Chiliarch. He could not help but shout, "Which general are you under? Why do you look so unfamiliar?" This shout also attracted the attention of the other South Ming Army soldiers. Everyone looked at these people with puzzled expressions. The captain of the third team was Shou Ho. He had already expected this to happen and did not panic. Instead, he laughed and said, "I am General Bai Kuin's personal guard. This time, I am here to inspect you. I say, your vigilance is not bad. The city gate is so tightly sealed. You can't be thinking that the 5-star army is so resourceful that they can fly into the city, right?" This explanation immediately attracted a wave of laughter. It was clear that everyone had the same thought. They did not think that the 5-star army could enter the city with such a tight seal. In addition, Shou Ho said that he was Lord Bai Kuin's personal guard. Just this identity alone was enough to make everyone look up to him. So it is Lord Personal Guard. Forgive my poor eyesight. Quickly come and rest. The chilly arch revealed a fawning smile. Chapter 1612. Since someone invited him, Shouho naturally wouldn't be polite. He called the members of Squad 3 and 4 and strode towards the East City Gate. While walking, they also intentionally tidied up the long backpack behind them. It contained the 95 style. Completely caught off guard, Shouho brought his men to the side of the chilly arch. The other members also began to move closer to the other soldiers of the Southern Ming army. A silent killing intent was spreading. The chilly arch seemed to be a chatterbox, but he also seemed to have a friendly personality. When he saw Skinny Monkey standing in front of him, he walked up with a smile. Then he noticed the long cloth bag and asked curiously, "Lord Bodyguard, may I know what this is?" "Why? Do you want to know?" Shouho didn't have any intention to refuse. He smiled and took the long cloth from his back and placed it in front of the chilly arch. "Ah, can I see it? In that case, I'd like to broaden my horizons." The chilly arch chuckled with an intrigued look on his face. It seemed that everyone was very curious about the unknown. At this moment, not only the chilly arch, but the other Southern Ming soldiers also came to the side of the Langius Special Forces members with curious looks. Even the Southern Ming soldiers who were responsible for guarding the civilians also gathered. "Oh, I see. Then I'll show it to you. This is the secret weapon prepared by Lord Baikoen." Skinny Monkey-like laughed, then gave a look to the other Special Forces members. Then the long cloth strip was slowly opened, and the black gun body appeared in front of the Southern Ming soldiers. Most of these Southern Ming soldiers were people who rebelled with the 3 provinces, King Zhu Huitu. But after Baikoen surrendered to the Southern Ming army, they also changed and became part of the Southern Ming army. For people like them, their military quality was very ordinary, not to mention their knowledge. For people like them, firearms were something they had only heard of and had never seen with their own eyes, not to mention the extremely advanced 95 style. When this thing was taken out, they only knew that it was an iron lump. As for what it was used for, they had no idea at all. Shouho and the other members took out the 95 style in front of the enemy, then held it in their hands and pulled the safety. "How is it? Have you never seen him before? Let me tell you, this is the newest firearm. Its name is the 95 style. How about this? There's no point in just talking about it. I'll show you all their might so that everyone will have more confidence when it comes to defending the city. Yes, yes. Let us take a look and we will be more confident." The Southern Ming soldiers nodded in agreement. They didn't know that at this time they had already taken a step into the gates of hell. Skinny Monkey and the others didn't expect things to go so smoothly. Each of the team members quickly communicated with each other with their eyes. Skinny Monkey even straightforwardly made a hand gesture. This was not only for the 59 team members beside him to see, but also for Captain Tai Tiger, who was a mile away. He was sending the signal to attack. Fire! Everything was ready. The chilly arch was still standing together with the soldiers, waiting to watch the show. Suddenly, they realized that the black muzzles were pointed at them. Before they could react and understand what was going on, gunshots rang out. Bullets flew out from the muzzles as if they had eyes and hit their bodies. In exchange, the Southern Ming soldiers fell to the ground one after another. Their bodies were strangely identical, with bullet holes that were bleeding at such a close distance. And when the enemy wasn't prepared, the 1,000 Southern Ming soldiers didn't even have time to react before they fell to the ground one by one. The originally bustling East City Tower instantly became much more spacious. Charge! Tai Tiger was overjoyed when he saw all of this. Skinny Monkey and the others had successfully completed their mission and occupied the East City Gate. Now, it was time for him to launch his attack. He stood up and gave the order to the other members of the Special Forces to charge. At the same time, he raised his hand and shot a red signal flare into the sky, signaling to the 5-star Army cavalry outside the city to attack. The first to be frightened by the sudden change on the city tower were the commoners who were driven into the city. Just a moment ago, they saw the southern Ming soldiers surrounding Skinny Monkey and the others. But in just a short while, all of them fell to the ground and became corpses? What kind of powerful weapons were these people holding? Also, if these people wanted to attack them with guns, what should they do? Wait for death? Even at this time, the commoners were still cowering and huddling together. No one thought of resisting with their lives. It had to be said that this was also a kind of tragedy. Someone once said that when the Japanese invaded China, 2 Japanese soldiers were enough to watch over 2,000 people and make them not dare to act rashly. That was a scene that people didn't dare to imagine. But this was the most realistic portrayal of what happened to the commoners. This was the behavior of the foolish commoners. The way they were educated made them listen to everything that happened, without anyone leading them. Even if they knew that they would die, they would still accept it. They didn't even have the thought of resisting. It really made people angry and sad. However, this kind of thing wouldn't happen in the future. After becoming a Yangtze citizen, they would be educated and learn how to read and learn. At that time, they would know that people's lives were equal. If others wanted to kill them, they would kill them back. This was a legitimate defense and also a result of human nature. In this way, if someone wanted to harm the Han people in the future, they would have to wait for the countless Han people to stand up and resist them. At that time, even if you were a devil, the commoners would work together to tear you to pieces and defeat you. Back in the real world, Tai Hu and the others started to charge. After the southern Ming soldiers on the city tower noticed that something was wrong, they started to send troops to attack the city gate. Instantly, gunshots rang out, and the soldiers of the South Ming dynasty fell into a pool of blood. When Tai Hu and the others started to charge, Skinny Monkey also came in front of the commoners and said loudly to them, "We are the 5-star army. We are here to save you. In order to survive, please help us open the city gate and welcome the 5-star army into the city. Don't worry, at that time, no one will be able to threaten your lives. As long as your actions are reasonable and legal, you will be the proud Han people in the future. No one will dare to bully you anymore. I can guarantee that." Hearing Skinny Monkey say that he was sent by the 5-star army to save them, there was no need for any guarantees. The commoners all became excited. In the past, there were some rumors about the 5-star army, saying that they were very good to the Han people. If there were people who didn't believe it, when they were defending the city, the 5-star army didn't use cannons to blast open the city gate and injure them. Therefore, at this moment, there was no need for Skinny Monkey to guarantee anything. All of the commoners chose to believe him. What are you waiting for? Open the city gate and let the 5-star army in. Among the commoners, someone finally reacted and shouted. The commoners were like this. Once someone took the lead, they could display unimaginable strength. With everyone working together, the thick city gate was pushed open. At this moment, smoke and dust could be seen rising from the east gate. That was the scene of the 5-star army's cavalry from the north and south of the city. Very good. You have used your actions to save your own lives. You have done very well. However, there are still many commoners like you who are being used at the other 3 city gates. If you are willing, you can come with us to save more commoners. As the saying goes, saving a life is better than building a 7-storied pagoda. Your chance to accumulate good karma has come. Of course, if you don't want to go, no one will force you. As long as you stay here, your safety will be guaranteed. Skinny Monkey was still using his words to encourage the commoners. This was because this step was the first step for them to change. Under Skinny Monkey's persuasion, and with the thought that saving people could accumulate good karma, the main reason was that many of the commoners' relatives were still at the other city gates, and they indeed needed their help. Therefore, this suggestion quickly gained the support of most of the commoners. At this moment, more and more commoners responded, and Skinny Monkey's team continued to expand. Good, then everyone get ready. When the main cavalry of the 5-star army enters the city, we will go to the other city gates. At that time, how many commoners we can save will depend on you." Skinny Monkey was very satisfied with the commoner's performance and immediately grinned. In front of the city gate, Tai, who led 7 small teams to snipe the South Ming army coming down from the top of the city gate. Those who were able to join the Wolf Fang Special Forces and pass the assessment were all very skilled. As for the marksmanship, it was the focus of their training. Not all of them were sharpshooters, but they were not far from it. When they unleashed their godly spear techniques, none of the southern Ming soldiers who rushed down the city walls were able to escape. They were all shot to death. Thousands of people rushed down continuously, but none of them could reach the city gate. The general guarding the east city was finally afraid. He no longer sent people to attack the city gate. Instead, he lit up a thick smoke and began to warn them. At this moment, countless cavalry soldiers of the First Army entered the city through the East City Gate. At this point, the scales of victory began to tilt. Bai Kuan was still watching the performance of the 5-star army on the West City Gate Tower. When he saw the cavalry of the 5-star army constantly moving and the ground rumbling, he had already changed from the initial fear to the current calm. Chapter 1613. In his opinion, this was simply the 5-star army's bluff. If they really had such strength, they would have charged into the city a long time ago instead of lingering here from morning to noon. It was as if they had nothing to do. Lord, Lord, thick smoke, thick smoke. A guard casually looked back out of boredom and saw the thick smoke rising from the east gate. Then he exclaimed out loud, "What thick smoke?" Seeing how unsettled his guard was, Bai Kuan showed a disdainful expression. He was already thinking of kicking this person out of the guard team. After all, if he wanted to follow his own people, he needed to be calm because he was a hero of the southern Ming dynasty. As he spoke, Bai Kuan also turned around and saw the thick smoke rising from the east gate. At this moment, he completely forgot what it meant to be calm. He just stood there with his mouth wide open. He didn't know what to do. Wasn't there no 5-star army outside the east gate? Why is there smoke rising all of a sudden? What is going on? Could it be that someone had mistakenly lit the smoke signal? As soon as this idea came out, it was directly rejected by Bai Kuan. Even if there was a mistake, it should have been extinguished immediately instead of letting the smoke get bigger and bigger. In this case, there could only be one result. The East Gate was in danger, and it might have been breached by the 5-star army. What's going on? Where did the main force of the 5-star army come from outside the East Gate? How did they attack the city? Why didn't we hear the sound of cannons? As soon as he opened his mouth, he asked a series of questions. But regarding all this, no one knew what was going on. So naturally, no one could answer Bai Kuan's question. Report. Fortunately, it didn't take long before a scout from the city rushed to Bai Kuan's feet. What the hell happened? Tell me. Bai Kuan grabbed the scout's collar and asked with red eyes, reporting to the general. That scout was also shocked by Bai Kuan's words. However, he still replied instinctively. The 5-star army suddenly appeared in the city and attacked from the inside. Now that the main force of the 5-star army has entered the city, all the city gates have become dangerous. General, please send reinforcements. When the scout's reply entered Bai Kuan's ears, he shook his head in disbelief. Impossible. How could there be 5-star army reinforcements in the city? Didn't we check it before? Where did they come from? Bai Kuan found it hard to believe the truth in front of him. If someone were to tell him right now that the 5-star army's reinforcements had flown over while his attention was focused on the cavalry below the city walls, he would definitely not believe it. But now, regardless of whether he believed it or not, things had already happened. What he needed to do now was to send reinforcements. But the problem was, if he were to face the 5-star army head-on, would his 30,000 South Ming soldiers really be a match? If he was an opponent, Why would he threaten the commoners to become human shields? Although he knew that the possibility of them being a match wasn't high. But at this moment he had no other choice. Baikuin waved his hand and said with the attitude of a general who wouldn't return, "Leave a portion of you to guard the west side of the city. The rest of you follow me down the city walls. We will work together to chase the 5-star army out of the city." Chasing them out was a lie. The real thing was to find a chance to escape. Because when Baikuin said this, he didn't have the confidence to do it. The soldiers below didn't know the truth. They only saw that even the general was going to get on the horse, and they were all encouraged. Thinking that the city was still their territory, they all shouted and followed Baikuin down the city walls. The 5-star army's cavalry entered the city. Leading them was a division commander, Taimur. He had quite a bit of experience, and most importantly, his horse riding skills weren't bad. After entering the city, he led the cavalry and started to rampage. Whenever they met the South Ming reinforcements, the cavalry would crush the South Ming infantrymen in an instant. After the cavalry charged past, the ground was covered with corpses. The soldiers he brought were all veterans and elites. Furthermore, they were cavalry and had a natural ability to crush infantrymen. There really wasn't anyone who was a match for him. Wherever the cavalry went, the South Ming soldiers would either run away or kneel on the ground in surrender. The world's #1 cavalry was simply too strong. They were so strong that no one was a match for them after entering the city. Under Taimur's leadership, they first attacked the North City Gate and defeated the South Ming soldiers there. They opened the city gate from the inside and allowed the soldiers of the 2nd Division to enter the city. Following this, the 2nd Division headed straight for the South City Gate, while Taimur led his troops to the West City Gate. As the saying goes, enemies are bound to meet. Before they charged far, they saw a group of South Ming soldiers coming from the West City Gate. The general leading them was General Baikuin, who had just been appointed as Guangxi's left envoy. From afar, Baikuin also saw Taimur. However, he didn't recognize him. Seeing that he was wearing a general's armor, he only thought that he was an ordinary general. Baikuin, who wanted to take advantage of the chaos to kill his way out, naturally wouldn't avoid anyone. He needed to kill his way out. TSK, come and die. Facing the 5-star army that didn't have any firearms, Baikuin was still confident. After all, he was personally appointed as the Guangxi Great General by Zhu Huitu. You are Baikuin. On the other hand, Taimur recognized the general immediately. This was also because before the battle, someone had drawn a portrait of Baikuin. It was precisely because he had seen it that he recognized Baikuin. He was a little surprised. He was surprised that Baikuin recognized him. However, at this moment, he definitely wouldn't back down because of this reason. On the contrary, he waved his spear and charged forward. Who cared how this person recognized him? He would kill him first. Haha, good timing. Taimur wasn't disappointed that Baikuin didn't respond. He only needed to know that Baikuin's identity was very important. Holding his scimitar, Taimur began to speed up. It was precisely because he knew Baikuin's identity that Taimur didn't dare to be careless. Before he attacked, he had already made sufficient preparations. His other scimitar was ready to be unsheathed at any time. On the other hand, Baikuin's fighting strength was weaker than Taimur's to begin with. In addition, he had underestimated his opponent. He didn't think that his luck would be so bad that he would randomly encounter a famous general in the 5-star army. Therefore, when he attacked, he held back 30% of his strength so that he could charge forward later. After all, he didn't know how difficult the road ahead would be. If he used up all his strength right away, what would he do in the future? Just like that, one held back 30% of his strength while the other used all his strength. Originally, the strength of both sides wasn't equal. The strong were stronger and the weak were weaker. After just one exchange of blows, Baikuin knew that he had made a big mistake. The spear and scimitar collided. In that instant, a huge force was transmitted through his arm. It also caused Baikuin's entire body to tremble. His right hand that was holding the weapon almost lost its strength and threw it away. When an expert showed his hand, it was obvious whether he was skilled or not. After knowing Temu-Er's strength, Baikuin decided to use all his strength to deal with him. At the same time, he secretly cursed his bad luck. How could he meet such a fierce general so casually? However, it was obviously a little too late for Baikuin to get serious. Temu-Er, who had gained the upper hand in one move, laughed heartily and waved his left hand. The scimitar quickly drew a gust of wind and slashed across Baikuin's armor. With one slash, the armor was split into two. At the same time, blood and flesh were drawn out. It was just one slash. If it wasn't for the armor protecting his body, Baikuin's body would have been split into two. Ayaya! Baikuin involuntarily cried out when he felt the intense pain in his chest. He then turned around and tried to leave. Beside him, a few of his personal guards rushed over on their horses in an attempt to save their master. The bodyguards weren't slow. However, compared to the soldiers of the world's #1 cavalry army, they were much slower. These soldiers seemed to have expected something would happen. Without waiting for the bodyguards to rush over, they rushed out and blocked the path of the bodyguards. Taking this opportunity, Temu-Er chased after Baikuin. Just as Baikuin turned his horse around, a slash of his scimitar came towards him. Baikuin didn't expect that he would be hit again. His arm was hit once more, and he fell from his horse as a result. Save the general. When the bodyguards who didn't have horses saw this scene, they quickly rushed forward and blocked Temu-Er with their lives. Then, under the protection of the bodyguards, Baikuin, who was covered in blood, led the infantrymen behind him and kept retreating. Take the small path. Although Baikuin had been slashed twice, he was still conscious. After that exchange, he saw the power of the 5-star Army's cavalry. He knew that it wasn't realistic to escape by the main road. The only way was to rely on everyone's familiarity with the terrain of Nanning Prefecture and take the small paths to shake off their pursuers. The South Ming army was retreating while blocking the enemy. Along the way, they left behind more and more corpses. Hence, Baikuin was getting further and further away from Temu-Er. He was now 70 steps away. Let's stay. Seeing the fat meat in his hands trying to slip away, how could Temu-Er agree? If he really let the target escape, who knew how the other division commanders would laugh at him when he returned? He took out the Big Dipper crossbow from his back and pulled the bowstring. The Big Dipper crossbow was the exclusive weapon of the world's #1 army. Because the materials used to make it were expensive, it wasn't easy to make. Hence, the only army that could use it was the world's #1 army. When the Big Dipper crossbow was taken out, the so-called South Ming army became a target that couldn't withstand a single blow. Faced with a crossbow that could fire 7 arrows at a time, and the speed at which the arrows were loaded and loaded was extremely fast, a large number of South Ming soldiers fell in just 2 waves of attacks. Chapter 1614. Some of them had already become corpses, while others had knelt down and surrendered out of fear. This caused Temu-Er to have no obstacles in his way. With a loud laugh, Commander Temu-Er leapt out on his horse and headed straight for the injured Baikuin. The 5-star Army's cavalry entered the city, which meant that Nanning Prefecture had fallen. When the 4 city gates opened from the inside, countless commoners erupted with their strength, knocking down the 20,000 Southern Ming soldiers. The strength of the commoners could not be underestimated. It was fine if they didn't erupt, but once they did, the shocking strength they released would leave people speechless. Thus, Nanning Prefecture fell. The pitiful Baikuin was first captured alive by Temu-Er due to his injuries. After a simple bandage, he was tied to a pillar in front of the city square. Countless commoners swarmed over. The timid ones were allowed to throw rotten eggs or green vegetables at Baikuin's body. The more daring ones directly spat at him. There were even some who urinated on him on the streets. As for the more daring ones, they used sharp daggers to slice off Baikuin's flesh under the supervision of the 5-star army soldiers. This was a punishment worse than death by 1,000 cuts. All of this was because Baikuin wanted to force the commoners into a state of certain death. Now, retribution had arrived. If he had known that this would happen, he would not have chosen to use the commoners as a human shield even if he was beaten to death. Afterwards, when Baikuin's matter was intentionally spread to the various prefectures of southern Ming, all of the generals fell silent. They originally thought that the 5-star army's slogan of loving the commoners was a weakness that could be used against him. If they did it well, they might be able to turn defeat into victory. But now Baikuin had done this. Not only had he died without a burial place, but even his family had not received any benefits. All of them had died. With this living example in front of them, they could not help but learn from it. They did not want to become the second Baikuin. As for how the 5-star army appeared in the city, this matter became a mystery, and many people had a question mark in their hearts. Nanning House was taken down. As the capital of Guangxi, this had a huge meaning and alerted the South Ming troops in the other provinces. Right now, no one doubted whether the 5-star army would be able to conquer Guangxi. What they were thinking about was whether the 5-star army would continue to expand after conquering Guangxi. This was something that everyone was concerned about. Time passed day by day. After Baikuin was killed and Nanning Prefecture was broken through, the other prefectures in Guangxi all surrendered, to the extent that the world's 1st Cavalry Army, Cold Front's 2nd Division, and Russia's 1st Division had no choice but to fight on different fronts. However, even if they split up their forces, their progress was still very fast. Without encountering any tough battles, the 5-star army's vanguard would often open their doors and surrender. Just like this, in less than a month, the entire Guangxi region was under the influence of the 5-star army. Yang Qindong had also achieved his goal when he first came to Yunnan House, which was to completely control Yunnan, Guizhou, and Guangxi. In the 6th month of 1467 AD, when everyone's attention was on whether the 5-star army would continue to expand, Commander Xiaofeng's 2nd Division suddenly went south from Guangxi's Lianzhou Prefecture. With the firearms in their hands, in a short 10 days, they took down Guangxi's Gaozhou Prefecture and Laizhou Prefecture. This action shocked Guangdong's chief minister Yang Xian, who had been paying attention to the 5-star army. Previously, his staff had made many hypotheses, but they did not think that the 5-star army would make a move on Guangdong. This sudden action made Yang Xian feel somewhat at a loss. Afterwards, he anxiously called for a meeting of Guangdong's rank 4 civil and military officials to discuss a solution. In the meeting, everyone was arguing incessantly. Some people felt that the 5-star army was not to be trifled with. If they rashly attacked, not only would they have no chance of winning, it would also easily drag the entire Guangdong region into the flames of war. In the end, they would follow in Guangxi's footsteps. If that happened, everyone would be sinners. There were also people who felt that it was fine to attack, but they had to obtain the emperor's orders. Otherwise, they would be acting without a valid reason. If the 5-star army only wanted to take over these 2 prefectures and did not intend to start a war on Guangdong, then if they took the initiative to attack, wouldn't they be forcing the 5-star army to make a decision? After all, there was news from the front lines that the 5-star army wanted to take over Laizhou Prefecture because it was close to the sea. It was convenient for the 5-star army to transport supplies to the 3 provinces. This was a bit forced. Taking over other people's land to transport supplies was a bit too much. However, in the end, who asked the 5-star army to be so strong? This method was not reasonable, but it was somewhat reasonable. There were also people who wanted to directly attack back. The people who made this suggestion were mostly generals with lower statuses. They felt that the 5-star army taking over Gaozhou and Laizhou was already a provocation to the entire southern Ming Empire. If they did not attack back, where would their face be? Facing all kinds of thoughts, there was still no final decision even when the sky turned dark. Yang Xian could only announce the end of the meeting and return to his own residence's backyard. It must be said that this was a place that he often appeared in recently. The reason why he often came here was because there was an extremely important person living in the courtyard. Usually, when Yang Ding wanted to enter, he had to report his arrival. But this time he didn't care so much. He directly broke in with a few servants and saw Minister Xie Chongshu, who was writing memorials in the room. Xie Chong, Minister of Rights of the Southern Ming Empire. A month ago, he was ordered by Emperor Zhu Qijin to Guangxi to prepare to negotiate with Bugnam of Gojoseon. But no one knew that Xie Chongshu was very afraid of death in his bones. There were no more records of this person in history. Only some unofficial records recorded that he was once a grand scholar, but his ranking was not very high. The reason why he was able to become the Minister of Rights was because there was no one in the Southern Ming Empire. In addition, he was willing to give money to those eunuchs. Because he was afraid of death, Xie Chong walked slowly the entire way. As a result, he only arrived at the capital of Guangdong Province 10 days ago. When he arrived, there was already news that the five-star army had taken over the entirety of Guangxi. Xie Chong was unable to accept this result. Didn't he receive a report from the imperial court a while ago that Bai Kuan had built a human wall in Nanning and blocked the advance of the five-star army? However, how long had it been? How could the entire territory be taken over by the five-star army? Since Guangxi was gone, Xie Chong's mission was also gone. He quietly entered Sir Yang Fu's residence without alerting anyone. From his point of view, it was very likely that the imperial court would send a new decree. At that time, he could return to the capital and leave this dangerous place. However, who would have thought that the five-star army would take an inch and want a mile? Not only did they take over Guangxi, they even sent troops to occupy Gaozhou and Laizhou. This was not something that the Southern Ming Empire could tolerate. Thus, he wrote another letter to the imperial court and waited for the new decree. Others did not know that Xie Chong had come to Guangdong, but as the host, Yang Xian, was very clear. Xie Chong lived in the backyard of his residence. If he wanted to see him, he could do so after notifying him. Tonight, he suddenly barged into the courtyard because he wanted to ask what the emperor and the imperial court were thinking. Facing the aggressive five-star army, whether they wanted to fight or make peace, they had to give an explanation. "You're here. Have a seat." Xie Chong did not care about Yang Xian barging in at night. This was someone else's residence. If they wanted to come in, they could come in. Why would they need his permission? Not to mention, he also had some things to say to Yang Xian. "Lord Minister, the situation outside is very chaotic. It is very difficult for me." After sitting down, Yang Xian began to complain. I know. Lord Yang, don't worry. I have already sent an urgent letter to the imperial court. I believe that there will be a reply soon. Don't worry. Xie Chong was already panicking. However, in order to stabilize the morale of the soldiers and the people, he pretended to be comforting. Hearing that the letter had been sent, Yang Xian's expression became much better. Presumably, the imperial court would not blame him for losing Gaozhou and Laizhou after knowing that the five-star army had sent out such a powerful force. If that was the case, it would be much easier to deal with this matter. At this moment, he was also grateful that Minister Xie Chong was here. At least his position was not the highest. If something really happened, he would not have to take the blame. Although his mood became better, it was impossible to say that he was completely at ease. After all, he was the chief minister of Guangdong, the highest-ranking official here. If something happened in Guangdong, Xie Chong would be punished. He would not be any better. Since there were no outsiders here, Yang Xian could ask some probing questions. "Minister Xie, you see that the five-star army doesn't care about anything. Shouldn't we also do some defensive work? For example, the teaming guard is not far from Gaozhou. Can we order them to prepare for battle in advance?" Yes, Xie Chong said after thinking for a moment. Before receiving a new decree from the imperial court, no one knew what the emperor's decision would be. If the emperor decided to fight and he did not make any preparations, wouldn't he be delaying the important matter? He could not bear this responsibility. However, preparations were still preparations. After thinking for a while, Xiechong said, "Lord Yang, you can order the Guanghai Guard to make appropriate preparations. However, you must remember that if the 5-star army does not intend to continue east, do not take the initiative to provoke them. Violators will be punished according to military law." Chapter 1615. Understood. This was also what Yang Xian wanted to say. He did not want the 5-star army to attack because of his wrong decision. If that happened, there was an 80% chance that the Guangzhou prefecture would follow in the footsteps of the Nanning prefecture. The problem was, after the 5-star army conquered Guangxi, would they continue to attack the east and conquer Guangdong? The answer was in Yang Qindong's heart they would not. There were many reasons why they would not do so. For example, they did not have enough excuses, they did not have a good reason to attack, the current southern Ming was quite strong, and if they continued to fight, both sides would suffer losses, etc. Ultimately, Yang Qindong or Yang Xie and the 5-star army were not fully prepared. 6 years ago, because Yuandong province was attacked, Yang Qindong personally led the army and fought until now. The results of these 6 years were so great that it completely exceeded Yang Qindong's expectations. Before this, he wasn't mentally prepared for this. Even if they conquered 3 provinces this time, it was because of Zhu Huihua's provocation. Otherwise, Yang Qindong would have returned to Qiqian City to rest. The situation was already beyond his expectations. The management staff could not keep up, and the army also needed to rest after a long battle. If he wanted to attack southern Ming, he did not know how much military resources and supplies he would need. Before all of these were prepared, Yang Qindong wanted to stop here. Of course, if southern Ming took the initiative to provoke him, then he would not be polite. If he didn't have enough management personnel, he could just use the old people from the southern Ming Empire. Then, when there were new people, he could slowly replace them. Although doing this would cause instability in the rear, Yang Qindong wouldn't admit defeat when facing the southern Ming Empire's army. As for conquering Gaozhou and Laizhou, Yang Qindong really wanted to open up a sea supply route. In this way, all kinds of military supplies could enter the 3 provinces faster, and it would play a great role in stabilizing the situation. With such benefits, he had no choice but to do it. As for whether this would cause the southern Ming Empire to be disgusted or even take the initiative to send troops, Yang Qindong didn't want to think too much about it. What's the matter? You guys didn't care when Zhu Huiqiang sent troops to Langsun. You guys even supported Zhu Huiqiang with cannons. You even let Wang Mubin of Shiping deal with me. Taking down these 2 houses would be considered as interest. That was what Yang Qindong thought. After allowing Xiao Feng to take down Laizhou Prefecture, he ordered Leng Feng and the 2nd Division to build a port to receive the resources from Qiqian City. He himself was waiting for the southern Ming Imperial Court to send someone to negotiate with him. Although there was a southern Ming envoy named Zhou Ziang in the Nanning Prefecture, Yang Qindong wasn't going to talk to him. This person's rank was too low. He had already received news that Minister Xiechong had personally come. Since that was the case, it was better to have a chat with this person. Zhou Ziang, who had been neglected, was much more haggard than a month ago. He didn't know what was going on outside. He couldn't sleep well and didn't eat well. He had lost more than 5 kilograms. He had also requested to meet with His Highness Bugnam of Gojoseon more than once. At this moment, he no longer had the arrogance from before. Even when he spoke to a courier, he was very polite. However, even though he was polite, the courier didn't take him seriously. Perhaps it could be said that the order he received was to watch Zhou Ziang and the others. Everything else had nothing to do with him. He had requested for a meeting for several days. In order to achieve his goal, he had even taken out all of his valuables. It was all to curry favor with the courier. However, there was still no progress. At first, he thought that the other party thought it was too little, so he kept increasing the price. However, in the end, he realized that the other party really didn't want to accept it. On this point, Zhou Ziang was filled with emotions. Since ancient times, there had been a saying that there were 7 rank officials in front of the prime minister's door. It was said that the status of a servant was similar to that of the master. When the master was powerful, the small people under him could also benefit and even rise to the heavens. Just like in the current southern Ming dynasty, many servants of the big families were all arrogant. Sometimes they could even complete some tasks that only the officials could do. When they returned, they would receive some benefits. This was something that everyone tacitly agreed upon. After all, many things that the master wanted to do required the servants to complete. Why didn't this work in the 5-star army? Just from this small matter, one could see the power of the 5-star army. He couldn't even bribe a small courier. Zhou Ziang didn't know what else he could do. Just like that, the days passed with sighs and sighs, until one day, Ba Daojiang suddenly appeared in the courier. When Zhou Ziang saw the other party, tears actually flowed out of his eyes. It was as if he had seen his family after many years. At this moment, Zhou Ziang was indeed very emotional. He had finally met someone who kept his word. Assistant Minister Zhou, what happened to you? Could it be that someone mistreated you? Ba Daojiang was also shocked by the tears flowing out of Zhou Ziang's eyes. He instinctively thought that someone had done something unfavorable to the southern Ming dynasty. No. Seeing that Ba Daojiang had misunderstood, Zhou Ziang shook his head and said, "We are very good here. There is enough food and drink, and there's a lot of variety. It is really good." This wasn't to say that Zhou Ziang was flattering, but it was the truth. When it came to food, she would never be thrifty or diligent when it came to it. Using a sentence that Yang Qindong once said, if one wanted to change every day, they wouldn't even be satisfied with food. If they couldn't change, then what change was there to change? Oh, Ba Daojiang nodded his head in satisfaction after hearing this. He also didn't believe that someone would dare to do such a thing. The 5-star army rewarded the soldiers with great merits very generously, but at the same time the punishment for the soldiers who made mistakes was also very severe. It was just like how the soldiers didn't dare to accept Zhou Ziang's money, because once they accepted it, it wasn't a matter of whether they could keep their money, but whether they could keep their lives. At that time, their family would also be humiliated because of it. Everything was just for a bit of money, but they had to pay such a heavy price. It was no wonder that, although the soldiers were tempted, none of them dared to accept the money. Ba Daojiang knew that there wasn't a problem with the treatment, but he was even more curious. Why was Zhou Ziang crying when they met again after not seeing each other for more than a month? Speaking of which, they didn't have much of a relationship before, and this was only the second time they met. Moreover, the experience of meeting for the first time wasn't something that could make one happy, right? How could Ba Daojiang understand Zhou Ziang's emotions? After all, if he hadn't been imprisoned for more than a month, he wouldn't be able to understand that feeling. It was just that the smart Zhou Ziang would not voice out his feelings during this period of time. If he had the slightest bit of resentment, he was afraid that he would provoke the other party and leave in a huff. If that happened, he would not be able to call out to the heavens and the earth. He did not know how long he would have to endure. Not only did he not dare to complain, he also pretended to be fawning and asked, "Sir, is Bugnam of Gojoseon here to see this official?" Oh, that's not it. Ba Daojiang became more serious when they talked about serious matters. Little did he know that the moment he said this, Zhou Ziang's mood instantly fell to the bottom. If he wasn't here to see him, was he just here to greet him? Or was he here to see if he and the others were dead? Or was he here to end his life? When he thought of the latter, Zhou Ziang's face turned green, then quickly turned pale. It was obvious that he was really afraid. Ba Daojiang saw Zhou Ziang's expression and already guessed what he was thinking. He couldn't help but chuckle and say, "Assistant Minister Zhou, don't think too much. This time, I'm here on Bugnam of Gojosian's orders to let you and the others go. We've already received news that your Minister of Rights, Siechong, has arrived at the Guangzhou government. Since he's here, it's better to let him handle the negotiations. You can go back now and inform Minister Xie to come to the Nanning government. At that time, Bugnam of Gojosian will also arrive at the Nanning government. If there's anything, it's better to discuss it in detail there. After saying this, Ba Daojiang seemed to have thought of something and added, by the way, Bugnam of Gojosian is busy with military affairs and has many things to deal with. Therefore, I hope that Minister Xie can arrive at the Nanning government as soon as possible. If it's too late, I'm afraid that Bugnam of Gojosian won't be able to hold back and continue to mobilize his troops. If that happens, then no one can be blamed. That's enough. I've delivered the message, so I'm leaving. Assistant Minister Zhou, you can pack up and leave with the diplomatic group as soon as possible. Ba Daojiang didn't care about Zhou Xiang's reaction. After saying this, he turned around and left, leaving Zhou Xiang with his back to him. Zhou Xiang stood in the same place for more than 10 breaths. After pondering over Ba Daojiang's words, Zhou Xiang suddenly let out a scream. Then he shouted, "Hurry, hurry, pack up, we're leaving now, right now." In the 3 provinces' king's residence, Yang Qindong was talking to Yao Yingjun in the main hall. The entire Guangxi had become one of Yang Xie's territories. Yunnan and Guizhou had begun to stabilize after more than a month of turmoil, so Yang Qindong had no need to stay here. After all, he wasn't Zhu Huiyin, nor was he the 3 provinces' king. In his eyes, there was only a palm-sized area. He called Yao Yingjun over to listen to his work report and the next step of the work plan. Fortunately, after more than a month of learning, Yao Yingjun had begun to adapt to his current work, and he was getting better and better at it day by day. In front of Yang Qindong, Yao Yingjun roughly explained the plans of the 3 provinces for the next few years. The main focus was on the migration of the people, distribution of land, and economic development. Chapter 16:16. In the process of listening to the report, Yang Qindong would add some of his own opinions from time to time. Yao Yingjun kept nodding as he listened, and then took notes. Evidently, being able to hear Yang Qindong's direct teachings was something that all of the Yangxie officials were envious of. It took more than 2 hours for the report to be completed. At the end, Yao Yingjun looked at Yang Qindong and said, "Sixth young master, I have a request that I hope you can agree to." "What is it? Tell me." Yang Qindong thought that Yao Yingjun wanted financial support. After all, it was impossible to move without money. "Sixth young master, I would like to send my wife, Julienne, to Qiqian City. As you know, I will have a lot of work to do. I'm afraid that I won't have time to take care of my family in the near future, so..." How was this about not having time to take care of his family? Yao Yingjun was basically handing his family's weakness to Yang Qindong. Soon, he would become a high-ranking official in the local government, a high-ranking official with real power in his hands. Moreover, he was so close to the southern Ming dynasty, who knew how many people would want his position and play tricks behind his back. In order to prevent Yang Qindong from suspecting him, Yao Yingjun decided to send his family to Qiqian City. This way, the trust level would be much higher for Yao Yingjun to make such a decision. It was enough to prove that he was a smart person. Yang Qindong liked to interact with smart people. This way, he could save a lot of effort. Of course, Yang Qindong was more concerned about old friendships. Ever since Yao Yingjun joined the Yang faction, he had been working in the secret battlefront. It was not easy for him to lead an army privately. Now that he had to send his family away in such a short time, it was too cruel for him. Yang Qindong didn't want to leave an impression that he couldn't tolerate or trust people. Therefore, when faced with Yao Yingjun's request, he only said after a moment of silence, "Julienne doesn't need to go to Crimson City. She has lived here since she was young, and I'm afraid She won't be able to adapt to other places. Without you accompanying her, it would be even more boring. This young master doesn't want to break apart a couple. Ha ha ha. Yang Qindong actually refused. Although Yao Ingjun was happy, he was also anxious. This was the time for him to show his loyalty. He could not give up just because of Yang Qindong's rejection. Wouldn't that give others the impression that he was acting? More importantly, he would feel uneasy if he didn't reveal anything that could be used against him. At that time, he was afraid that there would only be other methods to monitor him. That would also be very uncomfortable. As such, Yao Ingjun decided to try again, saying, "Sixth young master, this subject has already discussed this with my wife, and she has agreed. All right, this young master can understand how you feel. However, Zhu Lian and you truly love each other, so it's best that you don't separate. Besides, you're tired from work and need someone to take care of you. How about this? Don't you have 2 children? Send them to Crimson City to study with this young master's princes and princesses. They'll have feelings for each other from a young age, and in the future, they'll be able to help them achieve greater things. Perhaps they'll be even more impressive than you. Their father, ha ha ha." He had thought that Yang Qindong had rejected him because he had better methods to monitor him. However, after hearing this, Yao Ingjun's tears immediately flowed out. Even though sending his 2 children to Crimson City was also a form of hostages. However, it was undeniable that this result was much better than sending Zhu Lian over. At least, as Yang Qindong had said, letting the children interact with each other would be very beneficial for the children's development in the future. Yang Qindong had already conquered a lot of land, and there was no need to say anything more. His children would inherit a lot of the family business, and now that they had a good relationship with the future successors, many Yangxia generals hoped for this. Now that it had fallen on his head, it would be a lie if he wasn't emotional. Yang Qindong didn't like to see people cry, especially men crying in front of him, so he quickly waved his hand and said, "All right, wipe your tears. If you want to thank the young master, you have to do the work at hand well. If there's anything you can't solve, you can send a telegram at any time. If there's anything disobedient, you can execute it and report it. The young master will support you." This was equivalent to receiving an imperial edict. Yao Ingjun once again prostrated himself on the ground and shouted, "Long live the king!" However, everyone knew that it wouldn't take long for this to become 10,000 years. At this time, Yangxia was so big that it had far surpassed the Great Ming. If Yang Qindong didn't become an emperor, the people below would probably be unhappy. Yao Ingjun left with a grateful expression, and it was time for Yang Qindong to leave Yunnan. Immediately, 2,000 black cavalry followed to protect them, and the Third Army's commander, Wu Sheng, personally led the troops to escort them. The group left Yunnan Prefecture and went straight to Nanning Prefecture. When Yang Qindong left the city, all the people in Yunnan Prefecture moved out. They came out of their own accord to send Yang Qindong off. It was because of this person's arrival that the people's lives had undergone earth-shaking changes. Not only did they no longer need to worry about war and personal safety, but everyone was also given a new piece of land and had a goal in life. This was something that many people had never dreamed of. Riding on the white dragon and looking at the scene of the people sending him off, Yang Qindong said emotionally to Yao Ingjun, who was sending him off, "Did you see that? Those who win the hearts of the people win the world. As long as the hearts of the people are there, there's nothing that can't be done. You local officials and officials must remember this." "Yes, this subject will remember," Yao Ingjun replied as if he had been taught something. Nanning Prefecture. Commander Tian, who was riding a horse outside the city. There were several teachers with him. They all knew that the 6th young master would visit Nanning Prefecture today. For this, not only did they clean up the city again, they also sent many cavalry to protect him. Today, the importance of Yang Qindong's safety was far greater than that of the emperor of southern Baiming. There were many Nanning people in the welcoming team. They stood on both sides of the road, either out of curiosity or out of gratitude. Without the Wolf Fang special forces sent by Yang Qindong, all the people would have been killed by the cannons. Just based on this point, it was worth everyone coming out of the city to welcome Bugnam of Gojoseon. There was another group of people in the crowd. There were many of them, about 1,000 people. They were wearing the Southern Ming official uniform that was somewhat out of place. They were the Southern Ming officials, led by the Southern Ming Minister of Rights, Xia Chong. After Zhou Ziang was allowed to leave Yunnan Prefecture, he rushed all the way to Guangzhou Prefecture and met the Minister of Rights, Xia Chong. After repeating the words of Ba Dao River, Xia Chong could no longer remain calm. He left Guangzhou Prefecture overnight and went straight to Nanning Prefecture. Xia Chong couldn't guess whether Yang Qindong would continue to send troops or not. However, he definitely couldn't allow the 5-star army to send troops because of him. If he really did that, he was afraid that the emperor would be furious. He only had one head, and it wouldn't be enough to chop it off. After rushing for a while, he finally reached Nanning Prefecture before Yang Qindong. Xia Chong was smart enough not to enter the city. In order to express his attitude, he decided to wait here for Yang Qindong to enter the city first. Although it was said that Yang Qindong already had the intention of lowering his head. But thinking about it, Yang Qindong was Wu Nanwang, who was recognized by the 2 emperors of the Great Ming Dynasty. It was not a big deal for a subject to be respectful to a king. Tian Hu and the others could understand why Xia Chong would appear here, especially when they saw that the Minister of Rights, who was so high and mighty, had to respectfully welcome their king at this moment. They felt even more honored. Didn't this also prove that the strength of the 5-star army was constantly rising? As everyone was looking forward to it, a black shadow finally appeared in the distance. Then, one after another, the bright 5-star army flag could be seen. It's Bugnam of Gojoseon. Everyone line up. Tian, who saw that the troops were getting closer and closer, so he hurriedly shouted. This time because Division Commander Xiaofeng was in Laizhou Prefecture supervising the construction of the harbor. He didn't rush to Nanning Prefecture. Thus he became the boss here. If something went wrong, he would have to bear the main responsibility. So he couldn't help but be careful. Fortunately, the elite warriors of the world's #1 cavalry army were arranged everywhere, so safety shouldn't be a problem. About half an hour later, Yang Qindong's troops finally arrived in front of Nanning Prefecture's west gate. Tian, who had already brought everyone to stand on both sides and saluted to welcome them. At the same time, his eyes were filled with excitement as he looked at Yang Qindong, although they hadn't been apart for long. Without Yang Qindong's command, the world's #1 cavalry army seemed to have lost its soul and felt all kinds of uneasy. Now that they could fight side by side with the 6th young master, of course everyone was excited. You've all worked hard. Yang Qindong, who was riding on the white dragon, returned a military salute when he arrived in front of Tian Hu and the others. Then his gaze seemed to intentionally look in Xia Chong's direction, but he ignored him and entered the city accompanied by Tian Hu and the others. In a distant corner, Vice Envoy Zhou Ziang said excitedly, Bugnam of Gojoseon saw us, he saw us. I know. What are you shouting for? What are you doing? Xia Chong also saw this scene, but he wasn't very excited. On the contrary, he felt that Yang Qindong cared about ignoring him, which made him feel very uncomfortable. However, when he thought about how his strength was inferior, what else could he do besides lowering his head? Finally, Yang Qindong, who was surrounded by people, entered the city. Xia Chong also tidied up his clothes and prepared to enter the city. Just now, not only did he see Bugnam of Gojoseon and Yang Qindong, but he also saw the might of the world's #1 cavalry army. It had to be said that this cavalry army not only had a large number of people, but they were also skilled in horse riding. Under their control, all the war horses didn't make any sound, and none of the war horses jumped out of the formation, which was very terrifying. Chapter 16-17. It must be known that these were livestock, not humans. To be able to make them so obedient, it must have taken a lot of effort. Based on this, it could be seen that this cavalry was not ordinary. Xie Chong, who had learned riding and archery, had his own horse. He still remembered that it took a long time to tame it. In the end, he was only able to ride it. He could not reach the level of familiarity with it, like the cavalry in front of him. Even a single horse could not do this, let alone so many war horses. From this point, this was an army that was not easy to deal with. Coincidentally, in the entire Southern Ming army, there were no decent cavalry. Due to the environment, the 5 million soldiers of the Southern Ming army were almost all infantrymen. Comparing them, wasn't it obvious who was superior? Thus, Xie Chong had a rough understanding of the strength of the 5-star army. In his heart, he was thinking that it would be better if he could negotiate, as long as Bugnam of Gojoseon's request was not too excessive. So what if he satisfied him? After all, if they really fought, the Southern Ming army's chances of winning were too low. Yang Qindong naturally did not know that the world's #1 cavalry army's formation to welcome him would scare Xie Chong. After he entered the city, he stationed himself in the largest courtyard in the city. This was a place that Tian, who specially prepared for Yang Qindong to rest. The courtyard was very clean. There was a rockery, a garden, and a pond. The environment looked very good. You are considerate. After Yang Qindong roughly looked around the courtyard, he nodded to Tian, who in satisfaction. Then he said, "Go and arrange it. Let the Southern Ming envoy come and see me." At this point, Yang Qindong did not intend to continue fighting with the Southern Ming army. Since they were not fully prepared, they would stop fighting first. Of course, since he had the upper hand, he needed to ask for some benefits. He was also confident that the Southern Ming army would agree to his request, because compared to him, the other side was not prepared for war, not fighting. Tian, who was shocked. After all, for a battlefield killing god like him, if there was no war, it would not reflect their value. After asking this question, Tian, who was somewhat regretful, he should not have questioned such a big matter. Although he was Yang Qindong's student and was now the famous commander of the world's #1 cavalry army, there were some things that he could not ask. On the contrary, Yang Qindong did not show any dissatisfaction. Let's see what the Southern Ming Empire's attitude is first. After all, everyone here is Han. It's best if we don't fight. To be able to give such an answer, Tian, who was already very satisfied. Then he said, Tian, who's #1 cavalry. Although Yang Qindong had been the Bugnam of Gojoseon for more than 10 years, he was still unable to adapt to his current role. Therefore, he gave such an answer to Tian, whose question. If it was the 2 emperors of the Southern Baiming or Zhu Huihua, they would definitely not answer this question. Tian, who moved quickly and quickly sent people to find Xie Chong and the others in the city. Then, he led them to Yang Qindong's temporary residence. In the main hall, both sides were able to meet. Facing Xie Chong, Yang Qindong could not be so casual. He first sat on the main chair in the main hall. When Xie Chong appeared, the other party could only look up to see him. Southern Ming Ministry of Rights Minister Xie Chong greets Bugnam of Gojoseon. Ministry of Rights Left Assistant Minister Zhou Ang greets Bugnam of Gojoseon. Dispense with the formalities. Yang Qindong raised his hand and said with a calm expression. Then, without saying anything, he asked directly, "Both of you, I heard that you are here to negotiate on behalf of the Southern Ming Imperial Court. What are your rules? Why don't you tell me everything?" Xie Chong was obviously not used to Yang Qindong's straightforward way of opening. Shouldn't both sides talk about their daily lives and friendship first before talking about business? Now he was asking about the other party's trump card. Anyone with a bit of common sense in negotiations would not ask such a question. Did Yang Qindong not know how to negotiate? Of course not. Yang Qindong's political wisdom was not low. The reason why he said this was to create pressure on the other party and let them know that the initiative of the negotiation was in his hands. The use of the word negotiation made it even more obvious that the Yang faction and the Southern Ming Empire were on equal footing. It wasn't a matter of who was the subordinate of the other. Otherwise, there would not be such a term. Xie Chong was not used to Yang Qindong's rhythm and method. For a moment, he did not know what to say. Yang Qindong deliberately frowned. What? Did this prince misunderstand? You are not here to negotiate, but to declare war? All right, this prince understands your intentions. Please go back now. Please also tell the Southern Ming Emperor that we will meet on the battlefield. Come, send the guests out. Yes. Beta Persei at the side immediately said and prepared to step out. This action gave Xie Chong a fright. Although some words were easy to say and unpleasant to hear, he really was here to negotiate on behalf of the Southern Ming Empire. Especially before the Southern Ming Empire was ready for war, it was better not to fight this war. And if the war continued because of him, the emperor would not be appeased even if he was killed. No, Bugnam of Gojoseon misunderstood. We are indeed here to negotiate. Xie Chong knew that he could not continue pretending. In order to complete his mission, he had no choice but to lower his head at this moment. From the moment he said this, it also proved that he recognized Yang Xie and the Southern Ming Empire as existences on the same level. All right, then tell me your thoughts. Yang Qindong wanted this kind of rhythm. Facing the somewhat aggressive Yang Qindong, Xie Chong found that the words he prepared before could not be used. For example, the words that insisted that Yang Qindong was still a subject of the great Ming Empire could not be said. This was because the other party was not afraid of war at all. On the contrary, he was the one who was afraid of war. However, there were still some words that needed to be said. Under Yang Qindong's guidance, Xie Chong opened his mouth. Prince Bugnam of Gojoseon, Emperor Ingzong's intention is to allow you to establish a new power outside of the Southern Ming Empire. The Southern Ming Empire's imperial court will recognize the existence of this new power. However, the current Yunnan, Guizhou, and Guangxi must be returned to the Southern Ming Empire. This includes the captured Shiping King Mu Bin, Sanxing King, Zhu Huifu, and the others. Also, enough! Just by listening to the beginning, Yang Qindong knew that the Southern Ming Empire did not see how powerful he was. At this moment, they were still holding on to unrealistic fantasies. Did they really think that he was just a king with a different surname and did not dare to fall out with the Southern Ming Empire? Yang Qindong did not make a move now because he was not fully prepared. He did not want more Han people to lose their homes and lives because of war. This was not because he was afraid. On the contrary, if he was really angered, even if he made a move now, he could guarantee that he would win this war. Moreover, the 5-star army would definitely obtain the final victory. At most, he would have to pay a higher price and more Han people would die. It was because he considered the safety of the civilians that Yang Qindong decided to temporarily stop advancing. However, this did not mean that he was afraid. If Zhu Qijin had such thoughts, then there was no need for this peace talk. Xie Chong's expression turned a little ugly when he was rejected after just 2 sentences. However, considering that the 5-star army was at its peak, he suppressed the anger in his heart and said, "However, I wonder what Bugnam of Gojoseon's intentions are." This prince's intentions? It's very simple. As long as the Southern Ming Empire agrees to these requests, our Yangxia army will stop advancing and guarantee that we will not invade. Oh, this lowly official is willing to listen to Bugnam of Gojoseon's intentions. Hearing that the 5-star army would stop advancing, Xie Chong was also interested. As for the so-called conditions, there was nothing to lose by listening to it first, right? Moreover, since you have brought up the conditions, we can discuss them later. Let's not talk about whether we can come to an agreement or not. At least, there was one point that could be delayed for a while. As such, under the gazes of Xie Chong and Zhou Xiang, Yang Qindong opened his mouth. This war was originally planned by your Southern Ming Empire. Don't deny it. If it wasn't for your tacit approval, Zhu Huiqiu wouldn't have had the guts to attack my Liangshan. Sheeping King Mu Bin wouldn't have sent his men to kill this prince without orders, and then personally led his troops to attack this prince. Also, the cannons used to attack this prince were also transported from your southern Ming kingdom, right? This should be enough to prove everything. All along, this prince has scrupulously abided by the duties of a subject. Even if the 5-star army was extremely powerful and wiped out all the foreign races around the Great Ming Empire, this prince still respected the Great Ming Empire greatly. Not only did this prince not have the intention to attack, but this prince also provided large amounts of food to the imperial court. Furthermore, the price was so low that this prince had to use money to subsidize it. However, on the other hand, how did you treat this prince? Blindly wanting to kill this prince. Speaking of this, it really makes one's heart cold. Although it is said that if the ruler wants the subject to die, the subject has no choice but to die, this prince has done so many things for the Great Ming Empire. Even back then, at the Tumu Castle, if this prince did not make a move, Yingzong would have already met with disaster. Since this is the case, this prince has already done his duty as a subject. Now that the ruler wants to kill this prince, then this prince will live for himself this time. When these words entered Xie Chang's ears, he couldn't help but lower his head. Many of the things that Yang Qindong had accused the Southern Ming Empire of were true. If they really wanted to make a fuss about it, then the Southern Ming Empire had indeed let down Yang Qindong. This was because all along Yang Xie had always been the party that paid the price, and the Southern Ming Empire was the party that received benefits. However, the result now was that Yang Qindong had to die. This was too much of a bully. If Xie Chong had Yang Xie's powerful strength, he would probably not be able to resist jumping up and opposing the Southern Ming Empire. Chapter 1618. Since Xie Chong did not speak, Zhou Ziong was even more speechless. It was clear that they were the weaker side in this negotiation. Even if the peace talks ended, the Southern Ming Empire would only suffer losses. Even so, no matter who initiated the negotiations, the emperor would not be satisfied. At this time, there was no way to hide. Who would take the initiative to charge forward? Since the envoy and deputy did not speak, Yang Qindong continued, "Even if you are not benevolent, this prince cannot be unjust. After all, this is a place where the Han people live. This prince is also a Han official. If this prince does not have to use military force, this prince is unwilling to use it. However, this prince must give an explanation for the previous matter. This is also an explanation for this prince and the officials under this prince. Thus, I will raise the following conditions. First, the Southern Ming Empire must recognize Yang Xie's legal authority over Yunnan, Guizhou, and Guangxi. These territories were taken from Zhu Huiyun by this prince. It was also because of Zhu Huiyun's request that I went to Southern Yun Manor. Now that the development has been settled, there must be an explanation. Second, other than Guangdong's Laizhou Manor, the Southern Ming Empire also needs to open up Chaozhou Manor, Fuzhou Manor, Taizhou Manor, Ningbo Manor, Songjiang Manor, and Huayan Manor. Our Yang Xie can build a military port there. Of course, the sovereignty of these places will still belong to the Southern Ming Empire. Our Yang Xie is also willing to pay some rent. Third, as a fellow Han, this prince will definitely not watch the Han people suffer. If the Southern Ming Empire's policies or the officials do not care for the people, causing some people to want to leave the Southern Ming Empire for our Yang Xie, the Southern Ming Empire will not stop them. We should respect the people's choice. If someone tries to stop them, then I, Yang Xie, will reserve the right to send troops to rescue them. Fourth, Yang Xie is willing to continue trading with the Southern Ming Empire. However, the Southern Ming Empire must guarantee the safety of the Yang Xie merchants. If something happens to them, Yang Xie will also reserve the right to send troops to rescue them. Fifth, for the prosperity of trade, Yang Xie is permitted to open banks in the southern Ming Empire. Of course, we will pay the taxes that should be paid on time. However, if someone has designs on the bank, then we will also protect the right to rescue them. Sixth, due to the bad weather this year, the grain harvest in the Yangtze region is poor, and the price of grain will increase by 30%. In some remote areas, the price of grain may increase by 40% to 50%. I hope that the Southern Ming Imperial Court can understand this. After all, the price of rations will be higher if there is less. This kind of thing has happened many times. 7. Yang Xie is willing to have more exchanges with the Southern Ming Empire. After the various ports are built, Yang Xie will have specialized passenger ships to open up the waterway from Qiqian City to the Southern Ming Empire. At that time, if the Southern Ming Empire is willing to send people to Qiqian City for inspection, they can apply first. After they pass the inspection, they can enter Yang Xie's land to study and learn. 8. Yang Xie. Yang Qindong already had a draft in his mind. Things came out of his mouth, one after another, and his requests also increased. Hearing this, Xie Chong could not help but break out in cold sweat. As for the specific terms of the negotiation, it still needed to be analyzed word by word. However, after hearing this, Xie Chong already knew one thing. That was, from this moment onwards, the Southern Ming Empire and Yangtze were no longer subordinate to each other, although they were not in the past. However, from this moment onwards, the two sides were on equal footing. Yang Qindong's ambition had already been exposed. However, even if this was the case, what could Xie Chong say? Could he say that he did not agree? Could he say that the Southern Ming Empire would send an army to teach the 5-star army how to behave? If he could not do this, then it was better not to mention it. The situation was stronger than the person, and the fist was not as strong as the person. If he still wanted to reason with the other party, that was not courage, but stupidity. After nearly half an hour, Yang Qindong roughly explained his requests. Then he looked at Xie Chong's pale face and said, "This is only the preliminary negotiation outline that this king has drafted. As for the specific matters, I, Yang Xie's foreign affairs chief, will discuss it with Minister Xie. You can also send this general request back to the Southern Ming Empire's capital, so that the emperor will know first. However, there is one thing that this king wants to make clear. The Southern Ming Empire must agree to the above conditions. Otherwise, the Southern Ming Empire will be seen as insincere. Next, just treat it as self-protection. The iron cavalry of the 5-star army will not stop moving forward. At that time, don't say that I, Yang Qindong, did not take into account the relationship between the monarch and his subjects. Okay, Beta Persei, send the guests off." The tall Beta Persei immediately stepped forward and said to Xie Chong and Zhou Xiang expressionlessly, "Two sirs, please." If that's the case, this official will take his leave. Xie Chong also knew that there was no point in arguing at this moment. Rather than that, it was better to immediately write a memorial to inform the imperial court of Yang Qindong's request. As for what to do next, it was a matter between the emperor and the imperial court. He could no longer interfere. Xie Chong and Zhou Ziang finally left. At the back of the main hall, a similarly sturdy middle-aged man walked in. His face was dignified without being angry. Just by looking at him, one could feel a sense of ferocity. And he was Yang Xie's foreign affairs chief, Ma Dali. Generally, as a diplomat, they needed to look more amiable and friendly. This way, they would be more acceptable and their words would be more resonant. However, Yang Qindong did the opposite. His foreign affairs chief looked more frightening, and only this could better intimidate some people. After all, the current Yang Xie was incomparably powerful. The so-called negotiation ultimately depended on the strength of both sides. Otherwise, there wouldn't be the saying of weak countries having no diplomacy. It was precisely because they were strong enough that they needed to be tough in their diplomacy. This was something that Ma Dali did very well. He looked fierce, had a loud voice, and had a bad temper. He would often scold people if they didn't agree with him. However, it was this kind of life that was most suitable for the current Yangxia. This time, Ma Dali was transferred over from Resin City to play this role. It was to put pressure on the southern Ming Empire. Moreover, with Yang Qindong's current status, there were too many things that he needed to do. He wouldn't argue with the other party over something like negotiation. Ma Dali gladly accepted this task. Speaking of which, he could be considered an old member of Yangxia. He had been the foreign affairs chief for nearly 10 years. This didn't conform to the Yangxia's system of changing officials. However, no one said anything about this matter. Why was that? The reason was simple. Don't look at the Foreign Affairs Department's reputation. Because of the strength of the five-star army, they would often destroy a country if they didn't agree with them. As such, the Foreign Affairs Department often existed in name only. It wasn't of much use at all, and there wasn't much for them to negotiate with. Over time, the Foreign Affairs Department's authority was greatly reduced. Anyone with ambition was unwilling to become an official in the Foreign Affairs Department. After all, what was the difference between becoming an official in a useless department and retiring? Ma Dali was extremely depressed because of this. He didn't believe that the Foreign Affairs Department would have nothing to do. He was just waiting for an opportunity. Although he had been treated coldly over the years, he still didn't give up. He was waiting. This was because he had carefully analyzed that their king was an extreme racialist. This could be seen from the rising status of the Han people. With this kind of thinking, they could deal with other foreign races and other countries, but only the Great Ming, which was the land of the Han, could not be so rashly sent out troops. Otherwise, it would definitely be a loss for the Han people. At this time, it was time for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to help. Ma Dali's thinking was right. As expected, a telegram was sent to the Foreign Affairs Department. Yang Qindong personally asked Ma Dali to bring a negotiation team to Nanning. When Ma Dali understood the deeper meaning behind this, he organized enough people to take a boat and arrived at Nanning before Yang Qindong. Just like before, he had heard the conversation between Yang Qindong, Xie Chong, and Zhou Xiang. Now that he was angry, it was obvious that Yang Qindong wanted to hear his opinion. Previously, when he was hiding in the corner, he saw Xie Chong and Zhou Xiang's actions. At this moment, Ma Dali spoke with great confidence. "Sixth young master, don't worry. I will do my best to ensure that the Great Ming agrees to all of our conditions." "Hee, this king believes that you won't. Department head Ma, feel free to do whatever you want. Even if the negotiations fail, there is no need to be afraid. When the time comes, our cavalry will directly enter Guangdong." Yang Qindong didn't want to give Ma Dali any pressure, so he smiled and said. Yang Qindong was working with the idea of slowly encroaching on the Great Ming's political power. However, if the Great Ming didn't cooperate, then he would have to cut the Gordian knot and take the initiative to send troops. Although this way, the losses would be greater, but it might not be a bad thing to take over the Great Ming sooner. Yes, this subject understands. Ma Dali was full of confidence when he heard this. With a powerful military backing, what was there to be afraid of? Ma Dali left confidently. Yang Qindong stretched and looked at Beta Persei, who had returned from sending the guests away. He smiled and said, "How is it? You've been out for so long. Do you miss Madam?" Beta Persei scratched his head and smiled embarrassedly. This cute side of him could only be shown in front of Yang Qindong. In front of others, he was the majestic Beta Persei who killed people like flies. "If you want to, then just say it. We have been out for more than 6 years. It's time to go back and take a look." When Beta Persei smiled, Yang Qindong already knew the answer and smiled as well. Over the years, Beta Persei had many women by his side when he was out on expeditions. Every time he captured a place, the powerful logistics department would organize the local women of different races to serve the five-star army. At Beta Persei's level, the women who could be sent to his side were all beautiful women of different races. However, they were still not as good as his wife at home. "Can we really go back?" This little one, I really miss my children." Beta Persei smiled. Chapter 1619. If you miss your wife, just say so. Yang Qindong chuckled, then waved his hand and said, "Okay, tell the Black Cavalry to pack up. The ship that will take us back to Qiqian City should arrive at Laizhou Prefecture soon. We'll ferry home from there." Yang Qindong was going back to Qiqian City. He had been out for more than 6 years. This might not be a big deal for a general who had fought in all directions, but for Bugnam of Gojoseon, Yang Qindong, who was the leader of a force, it was really commendable to do this. After learning the news, Tian Hu and the others naturally did not say anything. They just met Yang Qindong and promised to maintain the status quo, and then respectfully sent Yang Qindong out of Nanning Prefecture to Laizhou Prefecture. As Yang Qindong boarded the ship and headed for Qiqian City, some changes also took place in the palace of Qiqian City. In the palace, all the maids were in a hurry as they walked through the halls. The smiles on their faces were gone, and there was only some tension in their faces. If one looked carefully, one could even see some fear in the tension, because just a few days ago, the 8th Madam's bedchamber was suddenly surrounded by a large number of palace guards. And then it was not long before Junko was ordered to be put under house arrest in the palace. Not only that, all the maids in the palace were taken away, and then there was gossip that those maids were taken to the musical house, and then there would be very miserable sounds coming from there from time to time. The palace of the 8th Madam, which was originally lively and full of vitality, became silent. Except for the 8th Madam, Junko, and Princess Yangxian, no one was spared, and all of them disappeared in the palace. The maids in the palace were a new batch, and it was said that they were sent by the princess, Queen Huyen, and they were responsible for monitoring Junko's every move. Since ancient times, the harem and the previous dynasty had a close relationship, which could not be cut off at will, because in many cases, some things in the harem also represented some kind of signal. The harem could affect the previous dynasty, and the previous dynasty could also affect the harem. The 8th Madam was suddenly put under house arrest. Although the news was not publicly spread, some officials in Qiqian City still knew about it. After all, it was so big that it was impossible for people to ignore it. In the original palace of Bugnam of Gojoseon, everyone got along very well. The Princess Huyen was educated and polite, and she was not a troublemaker. Although the other madams had different temperaments, most of them were born poor, and they wanted to fight in the palace. They did not have any clever means. More importantly, as the main character, Yang Qindong had not been in the Wangfu all these years. If they really wanted to fight, who would they fight for? Therefore, the harem of the harem in Bugnam of Gojoseon Earth was the most peaceful palace. Nothing had happened in all these years, but they never expected that this incident would be so big. They didn't even give a reason to the outside world. The princess consort suddenly took action, and the 8th Madam was put under house arrest. Of course, the so-called not giving a reason was because it was not publicly known, but most of the officials knew what was going on. That is, the 8th Madam, as a native of Japan, had pleaded with Bugnam of Gojoseon for the survival of the ninjas in her country. No matter what the reason was, at least in the eyes of outsiders, Junko had a part to play in it. But now the ninjas suddenly rebelled. Although they failed to assassinate Yang Qindong under the rock, their betrayal was exposed. The other 2 special ninjas, Kitamura and Yui Suzuki, also disappeared from the ninja base. This sudden disappearance of them from the 5-star Army's line of sight was enough to explain everything. They were now synonymous with danger and betrayal. Not to mention, more than a month ago, Bugnam of Gojoseon's 4th brother, Yang, was assassinated in Nanjing, the capital of the southern Ming dynasty. After investigation, the 5 assassins were all ninjas. All of this proved that they were dangerous. As the 8th Madam, Junko, who had pleaded for them, naturally couldn't get away from this matter. The 8th Madam was placed under house arrest, which made the palace that was usually very lively became silent. In a restaurant outside the Wang mansion, two middle-aged men were sitting and drinking. Because of their arrival, the entire floor they were in had been cleared. To be able to possess such authority, it was rare to see such a person in Crimson City. After all, this was the place where Wu Nan King's royal city was located. To put it in an exaggerated manner, the number of officials here was more than half of the entire Yang clan's territory. When there were too many officials, their power was naturally not that strong. But if one knew the identity of these two middle-aged men, then this matter was not strange. Everything was because these two had the surname Yang. One was called Yang Wu, and the other was Yang Lu. That's right, these two were servants of the Wunan family. In the entire Yang family, there were only 5 such family retainers. They belonged to the group of people who had followed Yang Qindong from the very beginning. Now, any one of them was a person of high status and power. Many times, their words were even more influential and effective than some of the Yang faction's chiefs. Now, these two servants were sitting together and talking about things. How could outsiders know? Any small matter that they talked about would cause a huge commotion if it was spread out. There's no need to be so formal, Yang Wu said with a smile as he took a bite of food. I'm used to it. Ha ha ha. Yang Lu laughed indifferently. Yang Wu understood Yang Lu's style. He knew that this person was prideful, lived a luxurious life, enjoyed life, and liked power. So, Yang Wu didn't say anything, although doing this would have a negative impact if word got out, with their status and, most importantly, their relationship with their master, Yang Qindong. They really didn't care about this little bit of impact. After all, if there was really someone who accused them in front of Yang Qindong just because they had booked an entire floor of the restaurant, they would at most be warned to be careful. However, whether the person who complained would be able to withstand the combined wrath of the two Yang family servants, that was something that they really didn't know. Yang Wu smiled indifferently, and Yang Lu didn't take it seriously either. Back then, he was reprimanded by Yang Qindong and even sent to the southern Ming kingdom to manage the intelligence department. Wasn't it because he was prideful and treated people to meals and received gifts every day? Since this impression had already been formed, so what if he went a little overboard? Not to mention, Yang Lu had his reasons for doing this today. It was because some words could only be said in front of the two brothers. It was really not suitable to be spread out. 5th brother, is the 8th madam really under house arrest? Did those ninjas really listen to the 8th madam's words and betray the young master? Seeing that they were almost done eating and drinking, Yang Lu began to ask questions. If such a question was asked by others, Yang Wu would not only reprimand, but also warn the other party not to inquire about it. If it was serious, it was possible that he would directly order people to arrest them. But it was Yang Lu who asked, so it was a different story. He just thought that the other party was curious. Yang Wu smiled and replied, "The matter is so big, how can it be false? The 8th madam is indeed under house arrest. As for whether she is wronged or not, it still needs to be investigated. There will be results before it can be determined. But in my opinion, whether the 8th madam did it or not, I am afraid that this matter has to be blamed." "Oh, why is that?" Yang Lu asked with great interest. "Do you still need to say it?" Yang Wu put down his chopsticks and organized his words. The ninja's rebellion is a fact. Because the 8th madam had pleaded for her, it is not too much to punish her. This is also the first rebellion that appeared in Yangxia. If it is not dealt with heavily, what if similar things happen in the future? So this time it can only be said that the 8th madam was unlucky and hit the muzzle of the gun. I am afraid that this matter will not be dealt with properly. So it is. Yang Lu nodded as if he just understood, and then said, "Then in 5th brother's opinion, how should we solve it?" "We can't send the 8th madam to the death row, right? Who knows? The young master has already returned by boat. Everything depends on the young master's decision." Although Yang Wu said that he was in Kaisen City all year round, and even the safety of the palace was under his control, He did not dare to say anything about this kind of thing. This was the young master's family matter. As a servant, he only needed to obey and not do anything. That's right, the young master will be back soon. Everything will be done according to the young master's wishes. Yang Lu's eyes flashed with a light that no one could see, as if there was a hidden meaning in his words. But at this moment, Yang Wu obviously did not understand it. Instead, he thought of another thing. He smiled and patted Yang Lu on the shoulder and said, "Lu, this time you saved the fourth master. You have made a great contribution. This time, the young master will definitely reward you when he comes back. Maybe he will give you a good job. Have you thought of where to go?" This time, it was precisely because of Yang Lu's timely appearance that he was able to save the life of the fourth master, Yang Yanghe. With this, Yang Qindong would definitely give him a good job. This was also the reason why Yang Wu said this. Let's see how the young master arranges it. Even if he sends me back to the southern Ming dynasty, I am a servant. Everything will be done according to the master's wishes. Yang Lu replied magnanimously. That's right. As a servant, we should have this kind of awareness. Come, Lu, let me give you a toast. Yang Wu smiled satisfactorily. In his eyes, his sixth brother had changed. He had become more mature. This was a good thing. They were both servants. They had trained together. They had risked their lives together. He sincerely hoped that he could become better. Yang Qindong returned to Kaisen City. He left in 1460 and came back 6 or 7 years later. After almost 7 years, he once again stepped on the new pier of Kaisen City. The accompanying Black Knights and Dragon Guards were also excited. Like Yang Qindong, they were also returning to their homeland after nearly 7 years. They were also humans and had their own feelings. Now that they could finally reunite with their families, everyone had a happy smile on their faces. Chapter 1620. According to the plan, 500 of you will follow the young master back to the palace. The rest of you go home and take a look. Beta Persei grinned as well. Following the plan that he had discussed with Qiu Vi, Dao Xiao, Ba Daojiang, and the others on the ship, he chuckled. This was Qiqian City, Yang Xie's headquarters. The First Army of the Cold Front had already returned after completing their mission in Yunnan Prefecture. After all, their training was still very important. Not only was there an elite army like the 1st Cold Front Division here, but there were other Cold Front divisions as well, including 2 Navy Cold Front divisions. With such a powerful force, no one would be able to harm Yang Qindong here. A team of 500 people was already considered a lot. Not to mention, Yang Wu had already brought 3,000 Longwei to the docks to welcome Yang Qindong. Beside Yang Wu stood another leader of the Longwei. He was Peng Yu, who had disappeared for a long time. He was ordered to assist Yang Wu in the security of the palace. At the same time, he was also tasked with the task of training the new Longwei. Peng Yu was also one of the veteran Black Cavalry. He had once protected Yang Qindong with Ba Daojiang and was deeply trusted. The 3,000 Longwei behind him was the result of his training. They were all from clean families and were the cream of the crop among the young people. Individually, they were all experts who could fight against 10 or even dozens of people. After all, the Black Cavalry would also have sacrifices. They would slowly grow old, so replacement was very important. If they were not prepared in advance, the number and quality of the Black Cavalry would be worrying. Since Peng Yu was willing to accept such an important task, it was clear that Yang Qindong trusted him. When he saluted Yang Qindong at the docks, his eyes were cold and filled with the aura of a soldier who was willing to die for his bosom friend. Not bad. Yang Qindong watched as Peng Yu walked up to him and praised him generously. He even patted Peng Yu's shoulder to encourage him. Feeling Yang Qindong's big hand patting him, Peng Yu was very excited. He straightened his body and said, "Everything is what this subordinate should do. I only hope that the 6th young master can bring me along the next expedition. I also want to go to the battlefield to kill enemies." It's approved. Yang Qindong had always appreciated the general's willingness to unleash their fighting spirit without holding back. A general with vigor might not necessarily win a battle, but if he didn't even have vigor, it would be very difficult for such a general to win a battle. City Lord Yu Qian also brought a group of civil officials to the pier to welcome the arrival of their king. Compared to the last time he saw Yu Qian, he looked even older this time. Even his head was covered with white hair. Even when he walked, his footsteps were a bit unsteady. In history, this Yu Qian, who had long passed away, had his fate completely changed because of Yang Qindong's arrival. He was now Yang Xie's helmsman. It could be said that Yang Xie could not be where he was today without Yu Qian's efforts over the years. It was only in recent years that he became older and did not do everything himself like before. Instead, he put down his power and began to train young people like Luan Shaoqian. But many times he still needed to make the final decision in the end. Yang Qindong had always been very respectful to this great hero. Without waiting for the other person to step forward, he took the initiative to walk over and extended his right arm. Yu Qian, the wind is strong by the sea. You don't need to come over. Haha, I'm welcoming our hero, our king. Yu Qian, who was usually reserved, cracked a rare smile and said with a chuckle. Thinking back to when the two first met, Yu Qian was filled with hostility towards Yang Qindong. He had even tried to impeach Yang Qindong. Later on, he was tricked into coming to Crimson City. He was also very unwilling, thinking that Yang Qindong was a traitor of the great Ming dynasty. Establishing his own faction would only weaken the strength of the great Ming dynasty, and he was courting his own destruction. But when he really began to understand Yang Qindong's thoughts and saw what he did, the old man slowly changed his view. Later, he began to wholeheartedly devote himself to it, truly thinking about the future of the Yang family. Now, he was completely moved by Yang Qindong's actions. He also deeply understood a principle. If the Han people wanted to become stronger, they could only do so under the leadership of Yang Qindong. Yu Qian was not a stubborn person. This could be seen from how he commanded the defense of the capital in history. The reason why many people said that he was too straightforward was because he was not greedy as an official. This made many people feel that he was out of place. Just like when he was managing the entire Yangxia, many of his actions proved that he was a flexible person. Some of his ideas and actions also proved that some people could achieve great things as long as they were given enough trust. Yu Qian was indeed a person worthy of being entrusted with great matters. Whether it was his ability or his personal integrity, there was nothing to nitpick about. Thus, when he saw that Yu Qian was old and old, Yang Qindong could not bear to see him like this. He took the initiative to greet the other party and said that there were many things that he would need Yu Qian to handle in the future. Yu Qian happily replied, "Your Majesty, please be at ease. The Han people have not been liberated yet. These old bones of mine can still hold on." After greeting Yu Qian, the second person in line was the young Luan Shaoqian. He was in his 30s, but compared to Yu Qian, he was naturally younger. Currently, most of the matters in the city, Lord's residence, were managed by him. In fact, after 2 terms as a provincial governor, he had indeed been tempered. Now he was handling the entire Yangxia issue quite well, but it was only not bad. Perhaps it was because of his background. Luan Shaoqian was not muddle-headed on major matters, but he was always willing to stick to the small matters. In terms of ability and the overall situation, he was naturally far inferior to Yu Qian. This time, Yang Qindong returned to Qixing City to resolve this matter. Without Yu Qian to manage the specific matters, Yang Qindong decided to set up a cabinet. In the future, the major matters of Yangxia would be handled by the cabinet. You are also not bad, but you need to continue to work hard. Yang Qindong looked at Luan Shaoqian with a smile, as if he was praising him, but also as if he was reminding him. As soon as these words were said, Luan Shaoqian's face immediately became a little ugly. He knew that his recent actions were somewhat inappropriate, and if he said that he had no selfishness in this matter, he was afraid that he would not believe it. This matter was referring to the matter of the 8th Madame Junko. Because of the ninja rebellion, Junko was put under house arrest by the imperial concubine Huyen. This matter was a state matter, and it was also Yang Qindong's family matter. If Yu Qian expressed some opinions on this matter, it was not a big deal after all. He was not qualified to do so. But the bad thing was that Yu Qian had not expressed his opinion, or he did not intend to express his opinion at all. But Luan Shaochun expressed his opinion, and that was he questioned the actions of the imperial concubine Huyen. As everyone knew, Luan Xiaochun's sister was Yang Qindong's 6th Madame Luan Xiaoyu, and the 6th Madame also gave birth to a son for Yang Qindong, named Yang Chong. According to the teachers of several princes, this Yang Chong was very smart. Yang Qindong's son was also very smart. His mother was also favored by the king, and his uncle was the deputy city lord. In fact, he was the future city lord candidate. When all these things were placed on one person, it was impossible not to think too much about it. Just like in the people, there were many people talking about it. The eldest prince Yang Bo was very good, but the youngest prince Yang Chong was also very smart and also had the opportunity to inherit Yang Qindong's position. No one knew who spread this rumor, but as time passed, it became more and more intense. At this moment, Luan Xiaoli, as the deputy city lord, privately expressed his disapproval of the imperial concubine Huyan's approach to the 8th Madame. This matter spread out, and it was natural to imagine what the people below would think. Those who did not know only thought that Luan Shaochun was doing business. But those who knew some of the details were wondering if Luan Shaochun wanted to stand up for his sister and also for his nephew to inherit the position. This matter inevitably spread to Yang Qindong's ears. Just when Beta Persei asked if there was a need to clarify that it was Yang Qindong's idea to put the 8th Madame under house arrest, he shook his head. He knew that there was no smoke without fire, and this was a good opportunity to test Luan Shaochun. Yang Qindong was in the prime of his life, and he really did not think too much about the so-called successor. If it wasn't for the fact that this trip to Southern Cloud Manor was somewhat risky, he wouldn't have been able to establish the position of the successor so quickly. Because he had confidence in himself and most of the leaders of Yangxia, Yang Qindong did not make a sound, but just watched silently. He wanted to see who else would speak out on this matter. Sure enough, after Luan Shaochun spoke out, there were many officials who expressed their dissatisfaction with the imperial concubine Huyen in private or on certain occasions. These people were all recorded one by the Long Way, led by Peng Yu, and then investigated one by one. Because he knew that there was a traitor, Yang Qindong did not use any outsiders for this matter, and only arranged for Long Way to do it. Under such caution, there was really no news, but it also let more people jump out unknowingly. Yang Qindong's sentence, just now that she still needed to work hard, was an indirect reminder to Luan Shaochun that there were some things that she still did not do enough. Of course, if the Dragon Guards hadn't investigated and found out that Luan Shaochun didn't want to stand up for his sister or his nephew, Yang Chong, and was just expressing his opinion from the bottom of his heart, and those who followed him were mostly speaking with a matter-of-fact attitude. If they didn't have any connections, this time it wouldn't be a warning, but a direct arrest. Where there were people, there was Jianghu. There were conflicts in Jianghu. Yang Qindong had long known that this was unavoidable, especially when Yangxia's plate was so big and there were so many officials, and the benefits were so great that countless people would be jealous. For their own selfish interests, it was inevitable that they would do something excessive. Chapter 16:21. But as long as these people did not cross the red line, although Yang Qindong would punish them, he would not kill them. After all, he had to give people a chance to correct their mistakes, right? But if they really stepped on the red line, for example, they wanted to rely on their own strength to connect more people and shake the position of the air, then Yang Qindong would never let them off easily. Even if this person had great merits, it could not make up for such a mistake. Luan Shaochun did not cross the red line. Yang Qindong just reminded him. But even so, it made Luan Xiaoqin's face change greatly, and his heart woke up. In fact, after saying these words that day, he regretted it a little. Afterwards, he was reprimanded by his sister, Luan Xiaoyu. This was the first time his sister was angry with him in all these years. At that time, Luan Xiaoqin did not think that he had done anything wrong. After hearing his sister's analysis, he knew that his behavior could easily lead to misunderstandings, especially when some of the officials who had a good relationship with him also expressed their opinions afterwards. He knew that his influence was great and the consequences of his words and actions. Fortunately, Luan Xiaoyu was really a smart woman. In her words, she was already very satisfied that the Luan family could go from a poor family that could not even solve the problem of food and clothing to today. Big Brother, Luan Xiaoyu's private name for Yang Qindong, had already given too much to the Luan family. But Big Brother could give, but the Luan family could not accept. Otherwise, they would not know what was good for them. If they did not do well, they would lose everything they had now. Luan Xiaoyu also said that Huyan had already done very well as the legal wife and had never had the intention to bully her sisters. Moreover, Huyan was Big Brother's first woman and also the woman he valued the most. No matter what she did, whether it was right or wrong, only Big Brother could say it. No one else had such authority. It could be said that Luan Xiaoyu's love for Yang Qindong was absolutely from the bones. It was because of this that she was willing to use her life to defend Yang Qindong's dignity. If someone wanted to offend, even if it was her own brother, she would not be rude. Brother, now that I have Yang, I am already very satisfied. It is the best thing that Yang can grow up happily and healthily. Let's not casually add more burdens to him, okay? That may not be what he wants. In the face of his lovely sister's request, what else could Luan Xiaoqin say? Not to mention that he didn't have such a strong desire to support his nephew. After all, their Luan family had just risen and lived a good life for a few days. Even if he did, he could dispel it after listening to Yi Qingyu's words. This was a private conversation between the two siblings. Yang Qindong did not know about it. Even the resourceful Longwei could not find out about this. However, based on Yang Qindong's understanding of Luan Xiaoyu, he still remembered the kindness in her eyes when they first met. Yang Qindong firmly believed that his Xiaoyu was not a woman who fought for power and profit. This should be her nature. There were other officials present at the dock. Yang Qindong shook hands with them one by one and chatted with them for a while. Then, a tram with wires hanging from its head drove over. Over the years, since the first battery-powered machine, battery-powered vehicles began to be used vigorously, but they could only be used to make some small vehicles such as motorcycles. However, the development of trams began to accelerate after they had the wires on the tracks. Now, a 19-seater long car could be built. It was said that a 35-seater longer car would also be trialed successfully. After getting on the tram, Yang Qindong said goodbye to everyone and went straight to the palace. He couldn't help but feel nervous. He still remembered that when he came back last time, his eldest son, Yang Bo, didn't dare to recognize him. From this point of view, he was somewhat unfit as a father. And now, Yang Qindong, who already had many children, did not grow up with his children. Thinking about whether his children would recognize him when they saw him, whether they would call him father, or whether they would simply reject him, he actually felt a little uneasy in his heart. The tram moved and finally came to the palace. Here, Huyan had been waiting here for a long time with a group of princesses and children. When they saw a group of black cavalry dragon guards protecting a tram in the distance, everyone couldn't help but stand up straighter. The tram stopped, and Yang Qindong was the first to step out of the tram. It only stopped for about 2 or 3 breaths of time, and his eldest daughter, Lele, trotted all the way to him. As the eldest daughter, Lele was the king of the children. She bragged more than once about how close she was to her father in front of her younger brothers and sisters. In this matter, Yang Bo had some right to speak, but he thought that he was a man and shouldn't be so pretentious, so most of the time he didn't speak, which allowed Lele to be in the limelight. Now that Yang Qindong finally appeared among the many children, the word father seemed to only appear in the mouth of others, although their mother had taught them many times. The moment they really saw Yang Qindong, they were still a little scared and at a loss. Only Lele rushed over recklessly. Lele, who was already 14 years old, had already grown into a big girl. She had inherited the common good points of Yang Qindong and Chao Yin, and was very beautiful. When she rushed into Yang Qindong's arms, Bugnam of Gojoseon, who had faced 30,000 cavalrymen alone on the battlefield without batting an eyelid, was moved. He quickly opened his arms and hugged Lele. Then he quickly spun a few rounds, causing Lele in his arms to laugh nonstop. "Father, Lele missed you." Lying in Yang Qindong's arms, Lele didn't forget to act coquettishly. Father also missed Lele. Yang Qindong said from the bottom of his heart, "Then, Father, is Lele pretty?" Looking at Lele's expectant eyes that flickered as if they could speak, Yang Qindong laughed loudly and played along. "Of course Lele is pretty. Lele is the prettiest girl in the world." Hee, Father said so. Lele is the prettiest girl in the world. Lele laughed happily. Then she didn't forget to turn around to look at her younger brothers and sisters, especially her younger sisters, who seemed to be showing off something. Perhaps it was because of her bloodline, or perhaps it was because of a child's desire to compare. But Lele's performance really stimulated the other young princesses. For example, the second princess, Yang Nuo, fourth Madame Dong Xiangxiang's daughter, the third princess, Yang Ting, fifth Madame Tuoya's daughter, and the fifth princess, Yang Lin, fifth Madame Huyan's daughter, who was also 6 years old, immediately left their mother's arms and ran towards Yang Qindong. They seemed to want to prove themselves, to prove that they were the prettiest and cutest girls in the world. Seeing his 3 daughters running towards him, Yang Qindong quickly stopped spinning and put Lele down. But then Lele's voice rang in his ears. "Father, I'm amazing, right? Look at how my younger sisters want to get close to you so quickly. Lele is so smart." Yang Qindong laughed and sighed in his heart. A 14-year-old girl already knew how to manipulate people's hearts. He had to admit that children born in the royal family matured faster than children born in ordinary families. Yang Qindong's arms were long enough, his arms were big enough, and he had enough strength. With his 3 daughters in his arms, he didn't feel pressured at all. On the contrary, the 3 girls were at ease in his arms. The mischievous Yang Qindong even dared to stretch out her small hand to grab Yang Qindong's beard. When she realized that this father she met for the first time not only wasn't angry, but also intentionally made a funny face, she giggled and then wanted to repeat her actions. If not for Huyan's quick reflexes, Yang Qindong's beard would have been pulled out in a short while. The madams took over their respective daughters. Next, it was time for the boys to greet each other. The first to bear the brunt was the eldest son, Yang Bo. He, who was already 11 years old, appeared to be very calm. Although he also wanted to be close to his father like Sister Lele, he knew that he was a boy and also the eldest son. It was not appropriate to do so. So when he saw Yang Qindong in front of him, he suppressed his excitement and stood there quietly. He bowed and said, "Child Yang Bo greets father." Yang Qindong was very satisfied with Yang Bo's calmness, although he wanted his children to play more when they were young. Since they were his children, they had to bear too much pressure. It was better for them to be mature and stable earlier. "And Bo, you've grown taller and stronger. Very good. Father is very pleased." With this praise, Yang Bo's small eyes began to redden. Ever since he knew what it meant to be the successor, how powerful Yang Xia was, and how this position, this great responsibility, and this heavy burden fell on his shoulders, he became more hard-working than before. He woke up early and worked late every day to learn literature and martial arts. Now that he had finally received his father's approval, Compared to this, all his previous efforts were worth it. Although Yangbo was only 11 years old, he had experienced more, and more hardships than other children his age. When he was 3 years old, he entered the preschool of the Yang Family Academy to learn how to read and do math. When he was 5 years old, he entered primary school and began a deeper level of cultural studies. When he was 8 years old, he joined the children's regiment and began basic physical training. This year, when he was 11 years old, he entered secondary school to learn more cultural knowledge. Next year, he was preparing to enter the youth regiment from the children's regiment. So he began to experience real training to deal with local security. This was what he had to face and pay as a prince. In ancient times, it was more difficult to be a prince. Some even had to train their ability to be independent when they were 3 or 4 years old. They had to stay away from their parents and live outside. Every day, they had to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning to study. Even so, they might not be able to stand out from the other princes. This was because, in the end, it still depended on talent, how much the emperor liked you and how much luck you had. Otherwise, it would be very difficult to ascend to the throne. Chapter 16:22. On this point, Yangbo was at least lucky. He was Yang Qindong's eldest son, and his mother was the first consort, Huyen. As long as there were no major problems, his chances of inheriting the throne were the highest. Of course, all of this was based on his talent, and he had worked hard. It was precisely because he knew all of this that, although it was a little bitter now, Yangbo had never rejected it. On the contrary, he would do his best to do everything that was arranged for him. Sometimes, even his mother, Huyen, would feel sorry for him, but she was unable to dissuade him. This was his life, and he should pay the price. Therefore, to be able to become a great person, it was not as simple as luck. Most of them had really put in a lot of effort. Other than a few children with heaven-defying luck, most of the time, it depended on how much effort they put in to obtain the benefits. Yangbo had always been working hard. He wanted to follow in his father's footsteps. He wanted to prove himself. He wanted to be able to make Yang Qindong proud of him one day. In the face of such an ambitious child, Yang Qindong was of course very happy and gratified. An appropriate praise was needed. And as long as he did not overdo it and did not let the child grow arrogant, there would not be any problems. Instead, it would make the child work even harder. He patted Yangbo's shoulder and looked at him as if he was already an adult or a warrior. Sure enough, it made Yangbo very excited. Just based on that pat, that kind of recognition, his years of hard work had not been in vain. After Yangbo, it was Yang Chang's second son, Wan Xiaoyu's son, Yang Jun's third son, third Madam Xiao Yushua's son, and Yang Zhao's fourth son, seventh Madam Su Man-er's son. The 3 boys were the same age, and there was not much difference in height. This was also the first time the 3 children had seen their father in a real sense. Before, they had only seen him in portraits, and even more impressions were formed from the discussions of others. Now that they finally saw the real person, the 3 children who were only 6 years old were more or less reserved. But under the encouragement of their mothers, they still called out timidly, "Greetings, father." "Haha, greetings." Yang Qindong laughed heartily as he squatted down. Then he touched the faces of his 3 sons and handed over a delicate toy water gun to the 3 boys. This was the first product of the newly established toy factory in Crimson City that was about to go offline. As Yang Xia continued to grow stronger and richer, she was no longer satisfied with the standard of living. Instead, she began to pursue more spiritual things. The demand for cosmetics for women, bicycles for men, and even more advanced electric cars and steam cars, as well as toys for boys and dolls for girls, was also increasing. Assets needed to flow in order to better stimulate the market. Only when everyone was brave enough to spend could the economy develop more smoothly and rapidly. When his subordinates sent the investigation results to Yang Qindong, he waved his brush and many more factories appeared in Crimson City. It was only because the manufacturers of dolls had yet to produce products. After all, Yang Qindong's requirements for these things were still very high. At the very least, the dolls not only had to be sturdy and good-looking, but also couldn't have any shoddy materials. That was why they had yet to produce a finished product. But one could imagine that once a finished product was produced, the princess would definitely be the first to receive it. As for Yang Bo, Yang Qindong didn't intend to give him these things to play with. He had already grown up. Yang Qindong also promised that when he reached 14 years old, which was the time when the ancients came of age, he would personally give him an exquisite handgun. For this reason, Yang Bo was also looking forward to that day. After receiving the water gun, Yang Chang and the others were all excited. If it wasn't for the presence of their father and mother, they would have already gone to play with it. At this time, Yang Qindong finally had time to greet his wives. In public, ignoring the shocked gazes of others, Yang Qindong first hugged the first consort, Huyen, making her blush. Next, Qiao Yin, Lady Shui, Lady Xiang, and the others hugged him one by one. Yang Qindong naturally understood the principle of worrying about the lack of equality. He had to treat everyone equally. Otherwise, if he hugged someone less, it was inevitable that others would interpret it in various ways. Who knew how big of a wave it would cause? At this moment, with Yang Qindong's status, his every move would often attract all kinds of guesses. He really had to be careful. Yang Qindong finally stepped into the palace and participated in the welcoming banquet prepared for him by the first madam, Huyen. For a moment, the palace became lively again, as if the incident with the eighth madam didn't happen. Yang Qindong's return caused the entire palace to become festive and lively. However, in one of the chambers in the palace, a woman was sitting on the edge of the bed with a cute girl in her arms. The woman's figure was very good, and her skin was very white. If you looked closer, you would see that she had a beautiful face. The only flaw was that her eyes were a little red and swollen. If you looked carefully, you could see 2 streaks of tears slowly flowing down from the corners of her eyes. She was the 8th Madam Junko. Although she was a princess of the Japanese Empire, there had always been a tradition in the Japanese Empire that the husband was the leader and the husband was the sky. It was said that once a woman got married, she had to put her husband first and foremost. Junko was no exception to this. Since she married Yang Qindong, she really regarded him as the sky. Especially after Yang Qindong helped her avenge her father, mother, and brother, her heart was only left with Yang Qindong. It wasn't until after she gave birth to little Yang Qindong in her arms that she found a new comfort in life when Yang Qindong wasn't around. She usually accompanied little Yang Qindong as she grew up, and then taught her what she had learned in the Japanese Empire. The rest of the time, she waited for news of her king, Yang Qindong, and looked forward to his return. Such a woman didn't care about anything in the world, let alone the Japanese ninjas. She didn't even know where they went. But now, the ninja first assassinated Yang Qindong, and then assassinated Master Yangtze and almost succeeded. After the incident, Junko, who had spoken for the ninja, was implicated and put under house arrest in the palace. All the personal maids were sent away, and at this moment there were only some new maids and her precious daughter, little Yang Xian, who she didn't know. Even so, Junko never gave up. At this point, it had to be said that this was related to Junko's education since childhood. She was full of tenacity and believed in her innocence. She was waiting for the return of Yang Qindong. She believed that on that day, her identity would be revealed. And today, Yang Qindong returned. Junko also deliberately dressed up because, according to the rules, she could welcome her king at the gate of the palace. No matter what, she was still the 8th wife of Bugnam of Gojoseon, and this identity hasn't been erased. When she finished preparing everything and dressed her daughter, little Yang Xian, beautifully, she suddenly received word from Huyen that there was no need for her to attend the welcoming ceremony, and that it would be better for her to reflect on her mistakes in her chambers. At this moment, Junko couldn't stop her tears from flowing. But she didn't resist because she knew that Hu Yan, as the legal wife, had the power in the entire palace. This sister of hers didn't express her opinion on ordinary matters, but once she did, no one could doubt her authority. With a face full of disappointment, Junko returned to the palace. Then Junko found that the way the maids looked at her changed from disrespectful to somewhat disdainful, especially the head maid sent by the higher-ups, Cui Xiao, who directly showed a look of disdain in her eyes. Every princess has a personal maid. Such maids generally follow them for the longest time, and they are also the ones who know their hearts the best. Usually, they also serve as mentors. For example, the head maid of Junko was Miko, the former spy of the CIA, who later broke into the palace of the Japanese Empire and saved Junko. Because they had gone through life and death together, Miko knew Junko very well, and some things were properly arranged, which made her very satisfied. But since the accident, Miko was also taken away and no one knew where she went. In exchange, Cui Xiao, the female head maid who looked good, but there was always a flash of fierceness in her eyes, which made people dislike her. It was said that she was recommended by Brother Yang. It was said that Cui Xiao used to be a spy of the CIA, but because of an injury, it was not so convenient for her to move around. So she asked for a job in the palace. Now, she didn't know what kind of luck she had, but she was valued by Brother Yang and became the head maid of her own palace. Perhaps it was because everyone knew that she was recommended by Brother Yang, so everyone in the palace was very respectful. So Cui Xiao felt a little bit like a servant bullying the master, and now she was giving Junko a bad attitude. If it were the side concubine of Class 1, she would have already made a scene, or at least let more people know what happened to her. But Junko didn't. Instead, she still did what she should do, as if nothing had happened. The only thing was that she was not as willing to speak as before. All this was because Junko believed in Yang Qindong, believed in her king, and believed that her wise king would investigate everything clearly and give her justice. Because of this, no matter what kind of attitude Cui Xiao had towards her, she didn't say a word. She just sat by the bed holding little Yang Xian, motionless. The sky gradually darkened, and the banquet in the palace was also coming to an end. Yang Qindong seemed to have drunk a little too much because he was happy. With the help of concubine Hu Yan, he went to concubine's palace. The banquet naturally ended, and the other side concubines also returned to their respective places with their maids. The palace became quiet again. Chapter 16:23. It had been proven that Yang Qindong didn't send anyone to summon Junko. It was as if the eighth wife didn't exist. This made the maids who originally had hope become disappointed. Many of them began to look at Junko with a trace of contempt, like Cui Xiao, or people were like this. When you were in power, even a fart would be fragrant. On the contrary, when you lost power, no matter how well you did, you wouldn't hear a word of encouragement or praise. This was especially true in the harem. A concubine who lost power often lived worse than an ordinary maid. This was the reality. When the sky was completely dark, Cui Xiao left with a complacent look. It was said that fifth Brother Yang was looking for her, looking at her swaying and leaving with a complacent look after carefully dressing up. Many maids couldn't help but curse her in their hearts, but on the surface, they still respectfully watched her leave. When the foreman was gone, the maids' hearts were scattered. In addition, a few kind-hearted maids came to greet Junko and asked if she needed them to help make the bed. After being refused, the huge palace quickly quieted down. In the night, a breeze blew from time to time, blowing the red candles and shaking them constantly. In the shadow of the red candles, Junko sat there holding little Yang Xian, who had fallen asleep. Her eyes were empty and powerless. At this moment, Junko was very unwilling. She couldn't understand why Yang Qindong didn't care about her. She had to admit that when Yang Qindong married her, it had a certain relationship with the political situation of the Japanese Empire. For example, after Yang Qindong became the son-in-law of the royal family, it played a great role in Yang Xie's takeover of the entire Japanese Empire. But it was undeniable that Junko could also feel that Yang Qindong still had feelings for her. The two first met in the capital of Ming, and then spent 3 years together in the Yang Family Academy. So the two had a foundation of feelings. In the beginning, there was some estrangement because they worked for different masters. But now, Neon had become a small Neon province and a member of Yang's faction. Everyone was on the same side. This kind of estrangement should also disappear. But why did Yang Qindong come back and not care about her? Did he also think that the ninja assassination had something to do with her? Junko was a woman, but now she had another identity, a mother with a daughter. Her heart only cared about Yang Qindong. She had long forgotten about restoring the original prosperity of the Japanese Empire. With the current strength of Yang Xie, if the Japanese Empire would be self-destruction. Moreover, over the years, the population had been constantly moving out. There were probably not many Neon people left in their homeland. How could they talk about independence? This was a fact that everyone could see. So why didn't Yang Qindong see it? If he had seen it, why didn't he ask about it when he realized that she wasn't in the welcoming party or at the welcoming banquet? Or was it because he was tired of her? Or was it because he had used her? Now was the time to draw a line? Junko couldn't figure it out. The more she thought about it, the more she thought about it. The more she thought about it, the more she thought about it. Her mind was full of bits and pieces of her time with Yang Qindong. Tears unconsciously flowed down her cheeks and fell on little Yang Xian, who was sleeping soundly. Hey, it's fine if you don't care about your body. But why do you have to drop your tears on Xian? Aren't you afraid of waking her up? Let me tell you, children need to get enough sleep so they can grow more cute and beautiful. A voice suddenly sounded beside her, but Junko, who was in her own world, didn't seem to notice it. She thought that she was hallucinating because she could hear that it was the voice of the king that she had been thinking about day and night. After a bitter laugh, Junko muttered to herself, "Even the king doesn't care about me. Why should I care about myself?" Nonsense! Who said that this king doesn't care about you? The voice rang in her ears again, but this time it was so clear and real that Junko couldn't help but turn around. Then she saw Yang Qindong standing beside her, full of energy and vigor. If it was only Yang Qindong who appeared, Junko might have thought that it was because she missed him. But when she saw that in addition to Yang Qindong, even consort Huyen was standing beside him, she knew that this was definitely not an illusion. Ah, my king! Junko woke up and was about to stand up and salute. No need. Don't wake little Xian up. Yang Qindong was already prepared, so he reached out his right hand and gently pressed down on her. After feeling the warmth from his big hand, Junko felt that it was real. At that moment, she couldn't stop her tears from rushing out. The king finally came to see her. "You guys talk first. I'll take little Xian away first." Huyen, who was standing on the side, showed a very kind look, then reached out and gently took Yang Xian, then turned and went to the bedroom where little Yang Xian was resting. Just outside the bedroom, Huyan's head maid, little Qing, was standing outside with some other maids, looking around vigilantly. Although they didn't know why the king and consort wanted to visit the 8th madam's bedroom in the middle of the night, they knew that what happened tonight couldn't be known to outsiders. Otherwise, there wouldn't be Long Wei hiding in the dark outside the bedroom. Fortunately, the 8th madam had lost her power, so all the maids had gone to rest, and no one was waiting in front of her. As long as some ecstasy powder was blown into the room of these maids, they would be able to sleep until dawn, which saved a lot of trouble. On the side of the bed, Yang Qindong was hugging Junko, and the two were sitting quietly. After gradually adapting to the temperature of Yang Qindong's body, Junko knew that she had to say something. Otherwise, she was really worried that if she didn't say something, there would be no chance for her to say it. King, about ninja. Well, don't say it. I already know this matter can't have anything to do with you. This king has already known it. But now I still need your cooperation. I will leave before dawn, and then everything will be the same as yesterday. You also need to calm down for a while. Are you willing to cooperate with me? By the way, Tomiko and the others are living very well. They are now in a very safe place, you can rest assured. After this matter, they will come back and serve you again. The amount of information in these words was a bit too much. Junko didn't understand it for a while. But no matter what, she was still the princess of the royal family. After a while, she digested most of it. Although Junko didn't know what was going on. She knew that this was a trap and she was the bait. Thinking that she could do something for Yang Qindong, no matter how big the training was, it was not a big deal. Junko immediately said, King, please rest assured. Junko has no complaints and will cooperate well. Haha! Junko is the girl who has the best view of the overall situation. Well, it's already late. Can we rest? Yang Hodong first praised with a smile, then said with a hint of temptation in his voice. Yang Qindong knew that if he didn't do something, he wouldn't be able to completely eliminate the estrangement in Junko's heart. So he decided to sleep with Junko. Hearing this, Junko's eyes were full of affection and her face was red. She wanted to say, didn't King just come out from the madam's place? But thinking of Yang Qindong's strong body, she didn't say anything but just nodded shyly. Ha ha ha. With laughter, Yang Qindong and Junko slowly fell down. Then the gauze was slowly put down. What a garden full of spring. 12,000 words are omitted here. In a courtyard with 4 entrances outside the palace. The sky slowly brightened. The servant Yang Wu put on his clothes and walked into the courtyard. After practicing a set of martial arts, Cui Xiao came out of the room. Her face was flushed, and it was obvious that she was full. She was holding a basin of warm water in front of Yang Wu. Brother Wu, you must be sweating. Come, wash your face. Looking at the towel handed by Cui Xiao. Yang Wu smiled, then pinched her flushed face, and took the towel and began to wipe his face. While Yang Wu was wiping his face, Cui Xiao asked casually, Brother Wu, the 6th young master is back. Should I continue to work at the madam's place? Suddenly putting down the towel, Yang Wu's face was a little cold. Xiao! I'll warn you again, you can only be called king. You can't even call him king. How can you call him the 6th young master? In the entire Yangxia, except for a few servants who can call Yang Qindong young master, those who are closer to him can call him the 6th young master, and those who are farther away can call him king. But most people have to call him king. This is the rule. No one can question or break the rule. Yang Wu's face changed, and Cui Xiao was also shocked. Then she whispered, Yes, Xiao overstepped. Seeing that Cui Xiao's attitude was good, Yang Wu decided to let her go. Then he said, The young master is back, but he didn't go to see the 8th madam, so you should do what you should do. But remember, master and servant, no matter whether the 8th madam is guilty or not, only the young master can make the decision. As servants, we can't do anything that goes against the master. Otherwise, the consequences will be very serious, understand? Yes, Xiao understands. Cui Xiao quickly agreed. Well, it's getting late. You should go back to the palace. Although our relationship is here, and others won't say anything publicly, we still have to be self-disciplined. Chapter 16:24. Yes, I'll go back to the palace now. Cui Xiao quickly bowed and then stepped out of the small courtyard. After leaving the small courtyard, she suddenly looked back and said in her heart, When you were sleeping with me, you were so anxious. Now that you're done, you want me to go back and serve others. Yang Wu, you're just like this. Just wait until my master is promoted. At that time, I will definitely trample you under my feet and see your face. With a trace of anger, Cui Xiao returned to the palace and went to the 8th madam's bedroom. Along the way, the maids who saw her hurriedly saluted, which made her involuntarily raise her head. No matter what, she was half the master here, which gave her a sense of superiority. Until she walked into the bedroom. She saw Junko sitting in front of the mirror and dressing up. In particular, she noticed that Junko's mental state was very good, and she seemed to have a smile on her face. This made Cui Xiao even more puzzled. She could only snort and turn around to find a room to catch up on her sleep. Here, Cui Xiao was half the master. No one could control what she wanted to do. What Cui Xiao didn't know was that as soon as she left, Yang Lu came to Yang Wu's small courtyard. As Yang Qindong's servants, after the young master returned, they had to go together to greet him and wait for orders. There were only 5 of them in the Yang family. Even if Tiger's Mane was included, there were only 6 people. It was because they were talented that they showed their noble status. But this kind of nobility was only in front of others. In front of Yang Qindong, they were still servants. You're here, then let's go. Yang Wu saw Yang Lu appear and smiled. Let's go, 5th brother. Yang Lu also smiled, but what he didn't notice was the forced and painful smile in Yang Wu's eyes. As the guard of Crimson City, Yang Wu naturally had his strengths to be chosen here. Although no one said anything, he had a bad feeling about this. Yang Qindong woke up early in the morning and had breakfast in Huyan's princess consort's palace. He even held little Yang Lin and fed her a few mouthfuls of food before leaving with a satisfied laugh. When he saw that Beta, Percy I, Yang Wu and Yang Lu were already standing in the courtyard waiting for him, he waved his hand. Let's go to the city, Lord's Mansion. The so-called city, Lord's Mansion, had already become a 9-story building. However, the real office space was only on the bottom 8 floors. The 9th floor was reserved for Yang Qindong. This was what the ancients called the 9 and 5 Supremes. Not everyone could use the 9th floor. Outside the city lord's mansion, Yu Qian, who had already received the news, was waiting here with Luan Shaoqin and the others. Each of them had a look of anticipation on their faces. Because according to the past habit, every time the 6th young master appeared here, he would give very important pointers. Often, after these pointers became reality, the strength of the entire Yangxia would unknowingly rise to a new level. Everyone was waiting for Yang Qindong to appear and for his new instructions. This time, Yang Qindong did indeed have new instructions, and that was to establish a cabinet. Yang Xia was getting stronger and stronger. His territory was getting bigger and bigger, and there were more and more things to do. It was already insufficient to rely on the city Lord's Mansion to solve all the problems. So the cabinet came into being. They would help share some of the important things and make important decisions. Unlike the cabinet system of the great Ming dynasty, Yangxia's cabinet had a total of 9 people. Usually, everyone was in charge of something. Once there was a problem that could not be solved, the 9 people would vote according to the principle of the minority obeying the majority to make the final decision. If there was an abstention vote, and the result was an equal vote, then Yang Qindong would make the decision. Most of the time, Yang Qindong would not interfere too much with the cabinet's affairs. In order to avoid a situation where the cabinet had too much control, the management of the military was not within the scope of internal discussion. The military was independent, and even the logistics were the same. This was the only way to ensure that even if the cabinet was controlled by someone else in the future, the military would still be in the hands of the royal family. This would ensure that the royal family could turn the situation around, and it would be as easy as flipping a hand. Yang Qindong sat in the large conference room of the city Lord's Mansion. When he announced this decision face to face, the officials below were silent. Many of them showed excitement in their eyes. In fact, this was understandable. When Yang Qindong was not there, the final decision of Yangxia's affairs was in the hands of the city Lord's Mansion, which was equivalent to being in the hands of the city lord. Yu Qian was worthy of being the boss. However, because this person was wholeheartedly impartial and never showed favoritism, there were many things that people wanted to intervene in, but they could not have the right to speak. Now, the cabinet system was implemented, which was equivalent to decentralizing the power in Yu Qian's hands. So, they had more opportunities to intervene in government affairs. Of course, everyone was happy. Now, these people were thinking about who would be the first batch of people to enter the cabinet. Naturally, the low-ranking people did not think much about it, but they hoped that the officials they were familiar with could enter the cabinet. This was equivalent to having a strong backer. Among the people present, the one who was most disappointed was Luan Shaoqin. As the first deputy city lord, he was going to take over from city Lord Yu Qian. But now that the cabinet system was introduced, his power would be greatly dispersed. For a moment, Luan Shaoqin couldn't help but think of his private statement on the matter of the 8th madam. Was it because of this that it provoked the dissatisfaction of the 6th young master? So the cabinet system was introduced? This was Luan Shaoqin's thinking too much. Yang Qindong had thought about the cabinet system for a long time. He was using the political system of later generations as a reference, and now he thought that the time was ripe to establish a cabinet. As for the previous system of the city lord's mansion, it was because Yu Qian was the city lord. Yang Qindong was very assured of this person's ability and integrity, but now it was different. Yu Qian was old and could not do everything by himself. Luan Shaoli was too young and could be easily used by people with ulterior motives. Now was the time to introduce the cabinet system. Not only that, the appearance of the cabinet system was also a great advantage for the next conquest of the North and South Ming dynasty. It was because of this that today's meeting was held. Not to mention that Luan Shaoqian was a little disappointed. Yu Qian, on the other hand, was indifferent. Yu Qian was a person with a high evaluation in history. There was a natural reason for that. This was a person who truly cared about the people. In his opinion, as long as the people lived a prosperous life, it was the top priority. As for whether he would offend anyone in the process, it was not a problem that he needed to consider. Now, the emergence of the cabinet system represented a more mature sign of Yang Xie. How could he refuse? Not to mention that he also knew that he was old and could not stay in the position of the city lord's mansion for long. So naturally, there was no sense of loss. Then again, no matter what the people below thought. This matter was decided by Yang Qindong, so it was useless for others to doubt it. This was not a democratic era, but a period of imperial power. As the king and founder of the Yang faction, as long as Yang Qindong decided on something, the others would have to obey his orders. Well, next, I will announce the first batch of people to join the cabinet. Seeing that the discussion below gradually became quiet, Yang Qindong reached out and took a piece of paper with a list of names recorded on it. In an instant, the meeting became quiet. At this moment, it was most appropriate to describe it as a pin-drop silence. In the quiet, big conference room, only Yang Qindong's unusually calm voice sounded. Cabinet Leader Yu Qian. The first name was read out, but it did not cause any waves because everyone thought that this was a normal thing. Next, Yang Qindong paused and continued to read, Luan Shaoqin. Luan Shaoqin, who was sitting there and still a little nervous, couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief after hearing his name. He was really a little nervous because he was worried that his previous actions had caused the dissatisfaction of the 6th young master. If so, even if he was not a cabinet member, it was normal. If that was the case, it meant that he was completely removed from the ranks of the high-level cadres. The appearance of Luan Shaoqin's name did not cause any surprise. After all, everyone could see it. Bugnam of Gojoseon has been deliberately training his brother-in-law. In addition, he was the first deputy city lord, the first person after Yu Qian. It was normal for him to appear on the list. After Luan Shaoqin, Yang Qindong opened his mouth and read out the third name, Xinyu. As soon as this name came out, it was no longer quiet. There were more or less whispers and discussions. Xinyu, chief of the supervision department. In the many years since he took office, he has made contributions, but they were not very big. The main thing was that he had enough qualifications. This person joined the Yangtze with Yu Qian. It has been more than 10 years. It was precisely because of his seniority that, although the people below had some discussions, no one would say anything more. On the contrary, Xinyu himself was very excited at this moment. After his name was called, he got up and walked straight to the rostrum like Yu Qian and Lan Shaochen. Xinyu's age was not young. He was only 3 years younger than Yu Qian. But who says that you don't have ambition when you're old? It was good to be able to exert their remaining energy. Presumably, it was not only Xinyu who thought this way. Many old chiefs of various departments would also think this way. Even in the present day, this kind of thinking was still mainstream. After Xinyu, Yang Qindong called out Wu Qian's name. Wu Qian, chief of the anti-corruption department. His name and his name could be said to complement each other. Wu Qian really had no money. Moreover, this person was impartial, as if Baogong had been reborn. For the sake of his work, he even sent his wife and assistant to prison. Such a person was like an insurmountable mountain to those officials who had ulterior motives. His addition to the cabinet also made many people's hearts ache. With this point, they had to put away any ulterior motives they had before. Chapter 16:25. Wu Qian, whose name was called, didn't have any excitement. He stood up indifferently. As far as he was concerned, whether he joined the cabinet or not, he would still continue to work. It was just that joining the cabinet meant that Yang Qindong trusted him more, which made him a little excited. Just like Yu Qian, the longer he followed Yang Qindong, the more he saw Yang Xie's rapid changes, and the more he was influenced by Yang Qindong's personality. To be recognized by someone he admired was a happy thing, no matter how he looked at it. After Wu Qian, Yang Qindong called the fifth name Long Tainan. This time, the discussion below was even louder, and it couldn't be hidden. Long Tainan was just the chief of public security. To put it bluntly, he was just a person who maintained social security. How could he join the cabinet? In terms of qualifications, he was very shallow. Even when he was qualified to be the chief of public security, many people were skeptical. But now he actually became the first batch of members to join the cabinet. This greatly exceeded everyone's expectations. But then everyone remembered that Long Tianan's wife was Bugnam of Gojoseon's seventh sister, and he had nepotism. For a time, everyone was relieved. Some people even thought that if Long Tainan could enter the cabinet with his qualifications, did that mean that they also had a chance? For a time, many chiefs of other departments, even the chiefs of important departments, had a look of expectation on their faces. They hoped that the next person to be called would be them. Long Tainan stood up. At this moment, he also had a look of disbelief. It wasn't until he saw Yang Qindong gently nod to him that he knew that everything was true. He immediately took out the style of a soldier and strode straight to the rostrum. In the end, even under the influence of Yang Qindong, Yang Xie had nothing to do with the great Ming in many aspects. But Yang Xie's development time was still too short, and it was inevitable that he would be influenced by Confucianism. In that era, where culture was emphasized, it was really something that many people didn't even dare to imagine that a martial artist like Long Tainan would enter the cabinet. If it wasn't for Yang Qindong's words, even if it was announced by City Lord Yu Qian, his subordinates would have objected loudly. It could be said that it was Yang Qindong who had used his influence to decide this matter. After all, without Yang Qindong, there wouldn't be Yang Xie today. Without the 5-star army, there wouldn't be such a beautiful life. After reading 5 names in a row, Yang Qindong put down the paper in his hand. Then he glanced at the participants. For a moment, those who were under his gaze couldn't help but straighten their bodies. It was as if they were saying, "Pay attention to me, Pay attention to me, I'm also very capable. But unfortunately, after looking around, Yang Qindong said, for the time being, there are only 5 people in the cabinet. As for the other 4, I still need to consider it. But as long as you have the ability, you will have such an opportunity. Not only that, even if the officials of the great Ming dynasty are interested, they will also have such an opportunity. Ah, what? This sentence was like throwing a large stone into a calm pool, instantly causing everyone to exclaim in surprise. The officials of the great Ming dynasty can also enter the cabinet? Doesn't this mean that the competition is too strong? Yang Qindong saw this reaction and he was happy. This was the result he wanted. He believed that it wouldn't take long for this matter to spread to the imperial court of the great Ming dynasty, and it would definitely cause a lot of waves. This was the reason why he built the cabinet at this time. It was to dig a big hole for the great Ming dynasty. As long as there were empty seats, he wouldn't have to worry about no one jumping into it. Quiet down. Seeing that everyone was discussing for a while, Yang Qindong reached out and pressed down. Suddenly there was silence. It's still the same sentence. As long as everyone has the ability, you don't have to worry about not being discovered. Everyone will have a chance to enter the cabinet because the members of the cabinet will change every 3 to 5 years if there are no major accidents. There will be newcomers, and there will also be people who leave. 3 to 5 years. This was what Yang Qindong decided after thinking for a long time. If it wasn't fixed, it would only show how terrifying the authority of the king was. This way, he wouldn't have to worry about the people below fighting for power or playing tricks with him. In fact, if one looked carefully at the 5 people who were chosen, there were a lot of things to pay attention to. Needless to say, if Yu Qian didn't enter the cabinet, the others wouldn't have the qualifications to enter the cabinet. Letting him become the head of the cabinet was also a kind of affirmation of his previous work. When he was old, he would naturally retire. At that time, it would be the time for his son to take over the position. The son would inherit the father's business and have 2 cabinet elders. This was enough glory. There were also Xin Yu and Wu Qian. One was the chief of the Ministry of Supervision, and the other was the chief of the Ministry of Anti-Corruption. This was enough to show the importance that Yang Qindong attached to the supervision of officials. Presumably, if these 2 people joined the cabinet who would dare to interfere, they would definitely be severely punished. Moreover, because Yu Qian and Xin Yu were officials from the great Ming dynasty, not only were they used for more than 10 years, but they also entered the cabinet. With this, it was equivalent to giving the other officials of the great Ming dynasty a lesson. Once the 5-star army arrived at the city gates, they would know what to do. As for the last 2, Wan Shaoqin and Long Tainan, one was his uncle, and the other was his brother-in-law. They were equivalent to family. When they were there, when the cabinet made decisions, it would definitely be based on Yang Qindong's will. At least, it would not be out of control. In particular, when Long Tainan entered the cabinet, it also proved that Yang Xie's focus was beginning to lean towards the side of local law and order. With the continuous creation of new areas, how to manage them became the most important thing. The above were Yang Qindong's considerations. All aspects could be considered to have been taken care of. After the meeting, except for the 5 members of the cabinet, everyone else left. After there were no outsiders, Yang Qindong first congratulated the 5 people one by one. Then he said, 5 cabinet elders, now that Yang Xie is growing stronger, the pressure and responsibility on you is also increasing. Not only do you have to take care of the things in your hands, but you also need to look further. For example, the South Ming Baiming and the West where the Navy is fighting. Since you are now cabinet elders, the power in your hands is many times greater than before. Every time you make a decision, you have to be very careful. You have to consider all kinds of problems and things. Not to say that you can't make any mistakes, but you have to strive for perfection. Yes, including Yu Qian. The 5 of them all respectfully replied yes. Good, since everyone is now cabinet elders. then I still have to give you more responsibilities on top of your original work. For the public, now that the conquest of the great Ming has begun, it would be best if we can peacefully accept it. For the public, the great Ming is also a place where people know each other. This matter will require you and Xingong to worry about. If there are old friends who contact you, use them if you can. If you can't, you can also appease them. Not long after, perhaps the South Ming will send a delegation to Qiqian City to study. At that time, I will have to trouble the two cabinet elders. Yu Qian and Shen Yu went to receive the officials of the Great Ming. This was the most appropriate thing to do. With them as an example, the officials of the Great Ming would know what to choose in their hearts. Yes, my king. Yu Qian and Shen Yu agreed without hesitation. This was originally something that they should do. Yang Qindong nodded in satisfaction. Then he turned his gaze to Wu Qian and said, Wu Qian, Yangtze's territory is getting bigger and bigger, and the officials needed are also getting bigger and bigger. When there are more people, it is inevitable that there will be all kinds of people. In terms of personal integrity, I still need Wu Qian to help me check. This king will still say the same thing. If something happens, investigate it. No matter who they are, who their backer is, or how big their background is, as long as they violate the law. Just do whatever you want. There is also the issue of the official's property. Whoever doesn't cooperate will no longer be an official. If you want to make a name for yourself, you want to reap benefits, and you want to have power, all the good things in the world can be yours. Good, this official will remember the king's words. Wu Qian revealed a rare smile. He also felt that the pace of Yangtze's expansion was a bit fast, and there were already signs of problems among the officials. He was thinking about whether he should make a heavy hand to clean up the officials. Now, Yang Qindong gave him an imperial sword. Especially when the property disclosure policy came out. If someone's family had more money than their original income, it would be clear at a glance. If they couldn't clearly state the source of the property, it would be easier to deal with it. So, in addition to his identity as a cabinet elder, there shouldn't be any big problems when it comes to work. Cabinet Elder Long. The problem of public security is the fundamental problem of a country. As long as the country is well governed, the people can put all their energy into building the country. Therefore, the public security headquarters should not only increase the intensity of patrolling, but also send outstanding cadres to some of the new Yangtze's territories to do in-depth ideological work with the people. Let them check each other and expose the people who have problems. They should strive to strangle the crimes in the cradle so that the losses can be reduced. Also, there are bandits and anti-Yangtze forces in some places. Don't be polite to these people. Contact the local garrison and make a thorough plan to eliminate them in one fell swoop. Don't be soft-hearted. Understood. Sixth young master, please rest assured. Long Tainan put down the pen in his hand, stood up, and straightened his body. Finally, it was Luan Xiaoqin's turn. Yang Qindong handed over the work of propaganda and education to him. Remember, propaganda is very important, especially in an era where people follow the herd. If this work is done well, it can make the society more stable and the people more motivated. Otherwise, there will be a lot of chaos. There is also the issue of education. You must build more schools, and the Han people must learn to read. Let them know what is loyalty and what is treachery, and better distinguish between right and wrong. Write a report on how much money you need later. Okay, sixth young master, I will go back and have a good talk with the people from the publicity department and the education department. I will definitely do this well. Luan Xiaoqin also quickly expressed his attitude. Luan Xiaoqin was also very satisfied with managing these two major tasks. This proved that his words still had a lot of weight, and Yang Qindong still thought highly of him. When it came to work, he didn't have any worries. Brothers, Longzi's new book, Duke Ferocious, is already a little fat. You can go and slaughter it. Hee hee. New book, Duke Ferocious. Please recommend, bookmark, click. during the new book period, please support Longzi Thanks. You're tuning in to the Thunder Spear YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.